talk about like, oh, StreamYard is changing like pricing or something.
I
And
thought StreamYard was free.
Yeah, like, and as far as I can tell, they still are offering a free version.
Yeah.
Which is great because that's what I use. So I don't know. I don't know. It's like it's one of the things I've seen people just referring to, like we've all already seen what's happening, and I'm like, I don't know that I have. So
I remember getting like an email about like our terms are changing or something like that,
right,
but honestly I didn't read it because I was like, I don't use it that often, so
yeah,
I probably should have read it, but
yeah. I figure we'll hang out for a few minutes. Like it kind of like, oh hi Nana, hello. I'm gonna just be chilling today. It kind of like doesn't even matter for these things. It's like, oh, should we like when should we start the actual content? Because like the content is like the same. It's like just us hanging out. So we can do that at any time.
It's just hanging out.
Hello, Ro.
That's good.
How is everyone doing? Feel free to let us know if you're working on something or just like hanging out.
I'm just trying to get Merlin to settle down right now.
Your project is controlling Merlin.
Honestly, it is.
Hey, baby.
No. Okay. You're gonna headbutt me? Come here. No. I have a box of yarn next to me, and so he is like trying to surreptitiously get to it because he wants to steal the yarn.
Of course, of course.
So
he really thinks he's being stealthy here.
He does. He thinks he's very clever. Are you eating something? Oh my god. He's always doing something. I wish he would just settle down. Like, anyways, I guess I'll get started, but I have to like watch him constantly.
Yeah, feel free to take unplanned intermissions for Merlin wrangling.
You cannot have that.
Nana is working on the last leg for her toad, which is a knitting project. That sounds
adorable. Toad? So cute.
I still haven't done any of the like little critters, but every time, like Huck, every time I see some of the ones that you've made that you've like crocheted, I'm like, those are really cute. I kind of want to figure out how to do something like this.
Would you knit it or would you crochet it?
Yeah,
you can knit stuffed animals, right? I've seen that.
Yeah, I would knit it, and I do. I think even in some of the pattern books I have, I think there's like a handful of patterns for stuff like that. I just like have never done any of them. Mm-hmm. There's also the danger of making something perfectly sized for a kitty mouth. So I don't know, but
yeah. Well, you just gotta go big, make something large, you know?
Giant, yeah.
Do a giant plushie. That's the answer.
Yeah.
There's also the danger of like discovering that you like it, and then you're like, okay, now I have like 50 plushies. What do I do?
Yeah. That's true. That is a real danger to consider.
That's kind of what I did when I was doing it with crochet, that I made one for a specific reason, and then I was like, now I have to make a ton of these. And so then I was like, okay, who do I know that has a like small child and or baby so that I can make something for them, because I don't want like a bajillion plushies, but I do want to make them.
Yeah. Nana said she just finished a frog for Julia. He's got a sweater and all. That sounds
cute.
Adorable.
Like Frog and Toad.
Yeah. I love it. Like that Frog and Toad has become such a source of like exhausted millennial memes. It's hilarious to me because like I read some of the books as a kid. I don't know if I ever watched the show, but it's like I was familiar with it when I was in the age group, but I like didn't remember any of it. So every time I see like a screenshot of a page where it's like, I want to go to bed and never do anything again, I'm like, oh, Toad's one of us.
Yeah. My mom loves Frog and Toad. She has like a little mini like Frog and Toad stuffed animals in her
Oh,
office that like sit on the bookshelf. So she's a big fan.
very cute. Huck, do you want to talk about what you're working on?
Well, I'm not working on like a real project, but in a surprising turn of events, I have started learning how to knit. So
Whoa! Plot
yeah.
twist.
Yeah, I have technically like learned how to knit multiple times, but it never really stuck because I don't know, I just didn't like it. But then some combination of things happened like literally a week ago, where I saw a bunch of like knit sweater patterns that were so pretty and I was like I really
Mm-hmm.
I like the process of crocheting more, but I don't for like clothing, especially sweaters. I just don't like the texture of crochet as much for a sweater. Like it works really. It's really. I think it's probably much easier to crochet like little stuffed animals and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sweaters, I like the look of knits better. And I just kept seeing all these patterns. I was like, ugh, I wish I could make these. And then Instagram started showing me videos of people knitting, and they were like something about it. There were certain ones where it was like them showing knitting like from the person's perspective, and there was something about like the motion of it that this one time it just like scratched my brain, right? And I just was like, I need to do this. There was something like so satisfying about the motion that has never been satisfying to me before. And I have tons of yarn. I happen to have a pair of knitting needles, and so I am currently just making essentially a very like ugly scarf because I'm just practicing
Yeah.
knitting, and I'm like patching together lots of different colors and like yarns because I'm just sort of like testing out different things. I think I have the wrong needle size for like the gauge of yarn. It's like I don't really care that much. I'm just sort of like fiddling around with what I have. Yeah, anyway, so that's what I'm working on right now. This is the scarf so far. So and he always wants to steal it. But yeah, so just sort of working on it. And honestly, I mean, I'm just doing like a stockinette stitch, and honestly, like it's not terrible. Like obviously it's not perfect and it could be better, but for essentially like the first knitting project I've done since I was maybe like 10, in which I did make a horrifically ugly scarf because my tension was so uneven that it was like really dense at one end and then really loose at the other end. And it was so weird. And for some reason, I had this horrible chunky yarn. Anyways, it's actually like my stitches are like decently even.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is probably just from, crocheting. I am used to controlling yarn tension. So, like, I'm
Right.
obviously learning a new thing, but like, there are some transferable skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just knitting this very, like, long, ugly scarf to practice. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. I was thinking maybe after this, I will make like a hat or something just to
Mm-hmm.
practice so I can, like, do ribbing and then maybe practice like decreasing or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel very like conflicted. Like I want to just jump into making a sweater, which I know may be over ambitious because like honestly, I feel like people make a huge deal over knitting sweaters and like how difficult it is. But me being me, I'm always like, I could do that. It can't be that hard. Like I could figure it out. I've made one practice scarf and maybe a practice hat. I could probably do a sweater. um, so I don't know. We'll see. I was also looking up like if there are any like knitting classes in my area or something, because usually I am very like self-taught, just throw myself in, figure it out. But like people seem to make such a big deal about knitting sweaters that I'm like, well, maybe I could take a class. I don't know.
Yeah. Or even like finding finding like a pattern to use that's kind of geared towards like if you've never knit a garment before, like because that's kind of what I ended up doing because I was also very stressed about doing clothing pieces. Like I have been knitting for so long at this point, and it was only a few years ago that I made my first like thing you can wear that is not
Yeah,
like
I
a
think I
scarf or a
remember
hat.
talking about it when you were like doing that for the first time, and it was very exciting.
Yeah. So I was like, this feels like a big step, like that I should, I don't know, prepare more for. Um,
Yeah.
and I do definitely see why, like it could very much be something that people like hype up more than they need to, but I do see why it is so different from other things that I had knit. It's kind of like socks, where it's like once you've done them like a couple of times, it's like, oh, okay, like this makes sense, I get it. But it is so different from like even doing like a heel is so different from anything else you knit mostly, or that
Mm-hmm.
it, you know, it does feel like this is a big step in my knitting journey. Um,
Yeah.
so I was really glad that I ended up finding, I don't even know how I found it, but like I think the pattern maker's name is Darling Jador.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on Etsy, and they also have a website. And I loved, I loved their pattern because it was like so like, here's what we're gonna do, and it's gonna be okay, and this is what it's gonna look like, and if you mess up this part, here's how you can fix it. And like, they even
That's
have,
nice.
if you're using like the PDF version, they even have links to
Mm.
different like tutorials that are really short and really easy to use. So I personally have really loved them, but like any pattern maker that you use that is like their patterns seem to be, at least one of the things they're intended for is like if you haven't made garments before from
Yeah.
knitting. So I think that can also obviously
Okay.
be a
Well,
big,
maybe I'll look them up also. I'll probably ask you later about who that
yeah.
was so I can look them up on Etsy. Um, yeah. I don't know. I yeah. I mean, I see why it is like that's one of the reasons that I never really got into knitting was also because it seems like something that it's very versatile but not very flexible. It feels like,
Mm,
um, and like crochet, I feel like is very flexible, so you can really like wing it a lot more easily. And if you mess up,
yeah.
it's a lot easier to fix it. And with knitting, it seems like there's just a lot more like planning that goes into it. And then if you
Yeah.
mess up, there's it's a lot harder to fix it later.
Kind of
Um,
like cooking versus baking, I'm realizing. I don't know. I just
maybe
had that thought. Sorry. Go
no, I
ahead.
see the comparison. Although honestly, I am more of a baker than a cooker. But you know what I mean. But yeah, I mean, I get the comparison. Cooking, you can do a lot more. Just kind of like throw things in, taste it. Does it seem okay?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know, but also just like my crafting personality tends to be very like it can't be that hard. I can just do it. You
Yeah.
know?
I think we've discussed this before, like when we were all sharing, like, my crafting toxic trait is like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I also have now that I've been doing this, like I've been starting to get like knitting related ads.
yeah.
Um, and one of the things I was kind of interested in is I did see one that was like a kit that you could buy that came with
Mhm.
like here is like the yarn, the needles that you would need for this that are the right size. It has the pattern for the sweater. It has like all of the notions, like anything that you would need. And I was like, maybe that's a good idea for like a first project because
Yeah.
also I'm a little confused. Like I understand how to like buy a needle size, but also sometimes with it when you're doing a first project, it's nice to just get a kit and just be like, okay, I have everything I need. I can figure it out
Yeah.
from here. Like I
Well,
did
and,
that
like,
when I was getting into embroidery like last year. I bought a couple of kits just to like
mhm.
be like, okay, I have everything I need.
Right. It is, like, nice to just have, like, the decision making is all done. All I have to do is, like, what they tell me.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
especially for
and
like a
knitting
first time project.
yeah, and that's how I self-taught. Like, that's how I learned, like, years and years ago when I first got into knitting. was one of those kits. And this one, it was more like it had actually like 7 different projects, I think. And the amount of yarn they gave you, it wasn't enough for all of them, but you could definitely do like 3 or 4, I think. And it had the needles, which I still use all the time. I love those needles. And it had like the instruction book that is like super basic, where it's like, here is how you tie a slip knot. Move your yarn over to the left. And I was like, perfect. This is what I need. So I am definitely a big believer in like starter kits like that.
Yeah. What material needles do you use?
I like wood best.
Well, mine are bamboo, but I hate the feeling of metal needles. They feel
Yes.
wet to me when I touch them, and I don't like it.
I also like, for me, the metal needles, it's like the sound they make that really, like, I don't like it. My brain does not like that. And
Mm,
so like I use them sometimes, and there are some pairs of like metal needles I have acquired over the years that like I do still like, and for whatever reason, maybe it's what they've been coated with, the sound doesn't bother me as much. But like, yeah, in general, like I always try to go for wood needles now. That's
yeah,
just
that's
what
what
I
I'm thinking. Because yeah, I don't know why, but metal needles just like always feel wet to me, and but like for crochet hooks, it doesn't bother me, and I don't know, like maybe they just have a different finish on them or something. But
yeah. Well, and it also is one thing to consider, and the reason why knitters, like some knitters, have like just very different preferences for materials, is like it depends on how, like if you consider it like a plus or a minus to have yarn move more easily on the needles,
right,
because like especially if you're doing like a hat or a sweater or something that has a bunch of stitches you're working at once, like I think having metal needles makes it way harder because you can drop stitches much more easily. And especially for something where you have a ton of stitches already, and or you're going to be counting them a lot, like I just think it just adds more stress for me. So there's like practical considerations too, but I have also seen knitters talk about like, oh, I only use metal because I get so frustrated that the yarn doesn't glide as much when I use like wood or something. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. Like if that's something that you
right.
like or don't.
Yeah, I think I probably would lean more towards like having a little texture to them so it doesn't move
Yeah.
as much. Because, like, even with this, like, I've had stitches like fall off, and then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, especially when Merlin grabs it and runs away with it, which has happened at least twice.
That'll do that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
The ones that I like best are I don't know how to say it now. Lika. Um their wood needles I really love. I'm actually using a pair right now, and they're like nice and smooth, but not like slick like
mhm.
metal are. Or another one, which is even more affordable, I think, is Knitter's Pride. Um, I don't remember.
I might
I
be
think it's like,
texting you with a bunch of questions like
yes,
later when I'm buying things. I'll just be
yeah,
like, you're just gonna be my resource now of like, where do I buy
yes.
needles? Like,
I am happy to be a knitting shopping buddy. I also think it's hilarious that like through the course of these crafting sprints, I have like drawn both you and Kelly into knitting. Like my plan all along.
oh yeah.
I mean, obviously it was you. Like I didn't convince you to do it, but it's just
No,
funny
no,
that
yeah, but still, over time, I feel like that is sort of just inevitable though. Like if you do like fiber arts, at some point you'll probably do all of them, you know?
yeah.
Like
It's a
also Kelly
never.
started crocheting, which
Yeah,
she hadn't done before. Like, you just I feel like you just kind of get into it.
yeah. You get craft curious. Like
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Nana was talking about making amigurumi crochet. She made 13 sea creatures for a baby mobile, so that was
oh,
a good
that's so
excuse.
cute.
That's great. That is a good reason. Um, yeah, I remember you talking about that, Nana, that you learned to knit 3 weeks ago. You've already made 2 hats, 3.5 frogs, and you're also working on a sweater. That's amazing.
All right.
Um,
Well, that gives me hope though that I could just pick this up and do whatever I want.
Yeah. She has bent her metal needles before because of my insane tension, so wooden or bamboo would survive my projects. Yes, it does depend though on how big the needles that you're using are, because I don't think I'm like especially hard on my needles, especially now that my tension has evened out a lot,
Mhm.
but I have actually had a couple pairs break on me. So that is
That's
one
what I've
thing to
heard.
consider.
Yeah, that some people don't like wood, especially when they're small. I think I
Yes.
saw somebody being like, 4 millimeters or smaller, like, should not be wood because they will break. So,
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know. Yeah. But it is fun to have a new project that I'm learning because I haven't really been crocheting a lot. And I think that part of it is because, like, I just reached a plateau with it. Like, not that I am an expert crocheter, but there is some internal measure that I have, I guess, with most crafts where, like, I reach a point where I'm like, I am good enough at this that I'm done with it, you know? Because like the learning process is really what's like interesting to me, and obviously it's not like, oh, I have nothing left to learn, but like I've learned enough that I've like satisfied whatever it is that is like pushing me to learn more.
Yeah.
um and so I just like haven't been crocheting a lot, and so now maybe this will like I'll have a an influx of knitting because it's learning a new skill, which is honestly my only hobby is like learning new things. It's not really the things themselves. Those are just sort of a byproduct.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's basically why I finally did decide to try knitting socks and then later sweaters, is because I also felt like it's funny, like at the time I wouldn't have said like, "Oh, I want a challenge." Like that's not what I would have described that feeling as, but that
Mhm.
is kind of what it was, is like I want to have to work towards learning something and then be satisfied when I do. Like I love that little dopamine rush. Like
Yeah. Trying to decide what color to do next, even though all of this, like, it doesn't really matter because it's so ugly anyway.
yeah,
What are
I'm
you
just
working
like
on?
I am using I'm using up kind of like a yarn scrap that I've like had for ages. Um because the thing that I am working on, I'm also doing a very basic, like it's just knit stitch over and over and over. Um because I don't remember, I think I did talk about it in one of our craft sprints, that one of the things I made was a little like decoy blanket for my cat Lego, because
Oh,
he
yeah.
also loves yarn and he loves the feel of it on his claws. So he loves to make his little kitty biscuits all over my nice projects and snag them and everything.
Right.
Um so I made a little decoy blanket for him, which has been actually working very well, which is exciting.
All right.
Um but now, so Petey, one of my other cats, he like always like sniffs and investigates his special blanket when he's over there. So I'm like, okay, well, now I need to make Petey his own blanket so that he feels like he has
Feels
it.
included.
Yeah. So that's what I'm working on. This is the special Petey blanket.
That's cool. I
Watch him
don't
be
know if
like, what's
Merlin would
this?
appreciate if I made him anything.
You could make him like, you could crochet like a fake yarn ball for.
He would probably just rip it up and then like try to eat all the yarn.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
He is very much like, this is why like I have such a hard time finding toys for him, because he rips things apart and then tries to eat the pieces. Like,
Hmm.
if he spit things out, then I would let him have more types of toys because like still with some supervision, but if I like trusted that he would spit things out, then I'd be like, fine, like it's your toy, destroy it, do what you gotta do.
Mhm.
But it's the fact that he tries to eat them that then I'm like, oh my god, like anytime he plays with this toy, I have to watch him like a hawk.
Yeah. Gotta
So
like baby proof your house.
yeah. Yeah, I have recently discovered that he has there's a squeaky ball. He was playing with it like right when we went live, but there's like a squeaky ball that he loves because it squeaks, but he doesn't rip it up, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is incredible because it's a toy that he actually wants to play with, but he doesn't destroy it, which is like truly one of a kind.
Amazing.
But I can't really find other squeaky balls like it, which is bizarre because it's like the most plain, basic squeaky toy ever. It's like a really cheap plastic, just plain ball that like I think I found it at my parents' house and they were like, "Oh yeah, nobody plays with this. He can have it." And so like anyway, so if anything ever happens to the squeaky ball, I don't know what he's gonna do.
Yeah. Oh man. He would pick
I
like the
see.
toy that is unduplicable or whatever that word
Yeah,
would be.
you're right. I can never find it again. Which like I feel like it shouldn't be that hard because it's just like a really basic toy, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. I was very sad last night to realize that I had to scrap a few different videos that I had already filmed
Oh
because the
no.
like sound quality was unusable because like I thought I had gotten pretty good at like knowing where to put my fan so that you can't hear it, but these ones for whatever reason I messed up.
Mm.
And so I am very upset at the prospect of having to like redo all that. So
I
we'll see.
yeah, that's frustrating. I've definitely had like a few videos where I filmed them and they were like kind of out of focus, and I still
Yeah.
posted them because I just was like, "Eh," you know.
Yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
that's the thing though, I guess sound quality is like harder because you have to, with like it being out of focus, I'm like not ideal, but you can still hear what I'm saying, which is really what matters. But like with sound
Yeah.
quality, that's like a whole other, then you like, yeah.
Right. Right. And there have like there have definitely been times where I'm like, this is like right on the border of what I feel comfortable like posting, but I really don't want to have to redo this. So like, I caption all my videos and hopefully that is enough to help. But this one I was like, I cannot put this in public. Like I'm annoyed listening to it. So
Yeah. I have a few videos that I have a couple of vlogs that I have filmed like 95% of the vlog, and it's just the last clip that I never filmed. But now it's been
Mhm.
like a month since I finished that book. And I'm like, oh my God, I like, do I even remember what I was talking about? And so I keep meaning to like go back and like edit the videos up until the point where like I stopped, and hopefully it will like jog my memory. But
Yeah.
like also this is my problem. This is I have been trying to do more vlogs because in terms of filming they're so much easier because I can just like sit down and film something very quickly. I don't have to like do my whole setup and everything. But in
Mhm.
terms of editing, there's so much more work because
Yeah.
I'm so rambly. I end up with so much footage and it's so exhausting to go through all of it.
Yeah. I have that problem too because it's like, oh, it's a reading vlog or like a themed reading vlog, so like I can kind of just talk about the book. Like I don't have to be as like structured
Right.
with a review, which is like true, but also I also talk way too much to just like, free reign like so I
Yeah.
understand. It's like
Oh my goodness. So, but yeah, and then I start wondering if I should even bother trying to post them, but then I'm like, but I wanted to like do this vlog and like I don't know.
yeah.
Oh. But yeah, so I have not posted anything in like, I don't know, at least a month or something. So,
Yeah, mine has been very sporadic.
yeah. I've been thinking about, of course, since it's like coming to the end of the year, I've been thinking about like, what am I going to, um, like, what are my plans for next year for my channel and my reading and all of this? And like, I just don't know what I'm doing with my with my posting schedule because I don't have a schedule. And
Yeah.
this year my intention was to kind of just like be more casual about like posting whenever I wanted and like, maybe there are going to be more gaps between when I post, but that's okay. And so I've sort of accidentally started doing quarterly wrap-ups, but
Yeah.
like those have a benefit to them that like I like having lots of time to read between when I have to like form my thoughts on things, especially if I'm trying to like read a series so I can like get it done. But also, I forget so much by the end of the quarter. So,
Yeah.
and also I've been trying to read more recently. And so then it just like the volume
Yeah.
of books to review just like becomes a lot.
I hate the feeling or like the experience where it's like, I know I hated other things about this book, and the fact that I can't remember them right now does not mean that the book was better than I thought. Like,
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I take some notes while I read, but like not they're not usually like detailed notes. They're more like notes to jog my memory. And so like I have something to reference, but like the farther you get out, the harder even those are to like use, you know?
yeah, yeah. Sometimes
I
it's
tell you
like
about
even just a few days, and I like look at a note for myself, and I'm like, what? Like, what was she thinking? And she is me.
yeah. When this summer when I was on vacation, I was reading a book and like taking some notes in the back because I usually like have a post-it in the back where I just kind of jot down some notes. And one of my friends came by and he was like, "Are you like annotating your book when you're reading for fun?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I want to remember."
Yeah.
Granted, I don't think he knows that I have a channel, so like maybe that would have made more sense to him if it was like,
Right.
"Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to review this." But even so, it was just like funny to me that he was so baffled by the idea that I would like take notes on a book that I read for fun.
Yeah. I just recently finished a really short memoir called Thinning Blood by Leah Myers, which I loved. It's so good. It's she, because of her native tribes blood quantum rules, she is basically the last in her line where like even if she had children, they would not be considered native
Hmm.
unless she married one of like a very very limited group of people in her own tribe who like have a higher like percentage than she does.
Mhm.
And it's such a good memoir, and it's like it's really beautifully written but also approachable. Like it's one of the most interesting pieces of nonfiction I've read recently because she also structures it as like talking about the last few generations of women in her family and what their um, totem animal is, and like that's how she structures the book. And so she also uses that structure to like tell versions of her people's folk tales about these different animals, but she'll like change them and note when she's changing them to make um like why she's doing that for her specific life story. Um and the reason I brought all this up in the first place is because it was one of those books where like as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, I am so excited to reread and tab this. So like I get it. Like which it's also like somewhat unusual for me to feel like that with nonfiction.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
but like there are some lines, like when she's talking about um, the missing and murdered Indigenous women, and she compares how often that happens to the percentage of the US population that Native women are.
Mm-hmm.
And that those numbers are different. And so like I remember the way that she ends that section is we disappear more than we exist. And I just
Mm.
like there were so many parts like that where I just like had to like sit for a second and be like, this sentence, man, like so. But it's also like literally true. Like, and I think that's one of the things that made her writing so effective for me is that like yes, it was beautiful and it did have this um sort of like emotional or like figurative language kind of power or effectiveness, but it
Mm-hmm.
was also like this is a memoir about things that happened and this is literally true also. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Wow.
highly recommend that one.
Yeah.
um yeah. Weirdly, like it's one I would recommend if like for somebody in a reading slump or who just like hasn't been reading or finishing things because it's so short. It's like I think it's like around 150 pages or something, maybe a little more. And it reads so quickly and it's just like so well done. Like I don't often think of nonfiction books as being like, oh, this is great to get out of a reading slump, but I really, really loved this one.
Yeah. It sounds really good.
Yeah. I'll put the name actually in the comments before I forget, but
I had plans this year to like read one nonfiction a month or something like that. I have read zero nonfiction this year. Um, so, but I have read a surprising amount of sci-fi, which was also a genre that I had wanted to read. So, I mean, it's
hey,
not like a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, but for me, considering that my usual amount of sci-fi per year is 0 to 1, it's a lot.
yeah, this is a huge increase.
Yeah. So,
Have you read anything like especially good or interesting lately?
what have I been reading? I mean, I just recently read Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews.
Yes, I've seen that one around.
Which I liked it a lot. I mean, I think there are some things that like weren't quite like perfect about it, but I liked it a lot. Um, it is like, you know, kind of a YA horror with like some foresty body horror kind of stuff.
So your vibe,
Yeah,
exactly your vibe.
yeah. I mean, I'm not really a horror person, but I'm like, foresty body horror I can get into. Um, and I mean, I read it really fast. Like, I went out and bought it, and that night, like, just read the first half of the book in like one night, which for me is a lot. I don't
Yeah,
tend to do that.
yeah.
And yeah, I liked that one. I thought it was interesting. I liked it had a, you know, it was very I liked the writing in it, like the amount of like angst and drama for these children. I mean, they're in high school, but like is very dramatic, but like not in a way that felt out of place or cringy. You know,
Yeah.
I read another book recent. I read Starling House recently,
Mhm.
which I like Alex E. Harrow's like some of the other things I've read from her. But this one, it just like in Starling House, it just felt like the writing wasn't as like beautiful as I was used to. And then only when they talked about like the romantic relationship, it got like
Mhm.
really dramatic and like changed in the style. It just felt out of place because I just was like, why are you so intense right now? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Whereas in Don't Let the Forest In, like the whole thing is just like very like, you know, very like heightened emotion, very intense for like these, you know, teenagers. And they're very like, like I breathe, like you're part of my lungs. I cannot breathe without you, kind of thing. But it's just like it doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I actually was just talking the other day. I just was telling a friend of mine that I was like, I need you to read this book because I need to talk to somebody about the end because I don't know who's dead at the end and I need someone to talk to me about it because like I don't know how to interpret the ending. Like it's intentionally ambiguous. And so I was like, I don't know how to interpret this ending and I'm not sure who is dead. And so I need someone else to read this so we can talk about it.
And I feel like even among ambiguous endings, like deliberately vague or confusing endings, it's unusual to be like, I don't know which of you guys are still alive. Like,
yeah. I mean, it makes sense for this book considering it is like horror and like a lot of people were dying and like they're, monsters like attacking people and stuff. But like still, yeah, it's like it's a little ambiguous at the end there. So I liked it enough that I am now making one of my friends read it so that we can talk about the ending.
that's something.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, like I've had some ups and downs. I've been reading more this month, but and like I've had some things that I've enjoyed. I reread Wild Beauty, um, which was good. I've also had some kind of like meh things.
Mm-hmm.
I've DNF'd more books this month than like any other month in the year so far.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever read Small Favors by Erin A. Craig?
No, because I really liked her House of Salt and Sorrows book I read, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew that Small Favors involves kind of like animal horror sort of things, and I am not into that.
Yeah, because a horse did die in the first chapter, so yeah.
You're like, I guess.
I mean,
I
I
do,
DNF'd it, so like I didn't even get to
yeah.
to all of it, but
I do
I
really want to continue the companion books though for the House of Salt and Sorrows.
yeah. I don't think I liked House of Salt and Sorrow just fine, but I don't think I liked it enough that I would continue with it. Um, but Small Favors, like first of all, the vibes of it, I'm just gonna complain about this, but like,
Yeah.
the vibes of it as I was reading it, I was like, this feels like not that I've ever seen this movie, but you know that movie The Village? It's like about
Yes.
it's a horror, it's about a village. But I was like, this gives me that vibe. And then I've read some other like reviews where people compared it to that, and I was like, okay, I didn't imagine that it has this vibe. But it's very just like small, isolated village where people start to like turn in on each other,
Mm-hmm.
And I just am like, that's not a vibe that I'm that interested in. And also, it's like it's a very plot driven book, which in general, not great for me. But it's also horror, which is not generally my genre, and it's incredibly slow. And I'm like, if you're gonna be plot driven, you can't also be slow. Like, I
Yeah.
love a slow book, but that's when it's a character driven book. So, like, we're
Yeah.
just chilling with the characters, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there is a romance in it, which is not the main story, but it's there. And I hated it because the guy, like every time the two of like the like love interest talk to the main character, I'm like, I can tell he is supposed to be charming and this is supposed to be banter. And yet every single time I was washing dishes while I was listening to one of their conversations and I was just standing there being like, ew. Like
Yeah.
like literally every time he talked, I just made this like ick face because I just
Yeah.
was like, I hate
Like,
this. Because
ew,
I was
can
like,
you not?
this is not charming. This is
Yeah.
like this is not fun banter. This is truly just giving me an ick, and I hate it.
Yeah. One of the only things that I really didn't like about House of Salt and Sorrows was the romance. Like I so deeply did not care. And I enjoyed everything else enough that I was like, okay, fine, like have your stupid love interest with no personality. Um, but I am hoping that in the companion books, since the main characters are different, there's a
Mm-hmm.
chance that any romantic element will also be different enough that it works for me. So
Yeah.
we will see. I tend to get on well with companion series, so I'm hopeful. But
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully.
yeah, I was just thinking too that like while because I'm still like catching up on some of my previous wrap ups, I need to like film and everything, especially after I had to scrap things. I'm very upset about that. But anyway, I was thinking, I was like, oh man, I was like, I'm gonna have to review Dagger Spell. And I am not
Oh my God.
excited. Like,
Yeah. Oh my God.
that is one of
Yes.
those books that like I am going to like bitch and moan about for like half an hour. And I'm still gonna be like, there were more things that pissed me off, and I just can't remember them right now. But know that they were bad. Like,
Oh my God. Honestly, that's one of the books that I'm like, I don't think there's a single thing this book did well. Like, it just was terrible in every single aspect of anything it ever did.
I can't like I just can't get over that it's like this is being reissued. People are looking at this again, like people in publishing, and they're like, yeah, this holds up. And I'm like, what?
And like, yeah. Oh my God. I mean, we've talked about this because like I think I was telling you that like I was reading a bunch of reviews for it, and that there were
Yeah.
some people who were reviewing it being like, some people are just like snowflakes about like, oh, they shouldn't even include these topics, blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's not my problem. My problem is it's bad. Like,
It's like,
you can
yeah, like
talk about these
horribly
topics
done.
if you do them well, but this
Yeah.
doesn't. It's
Yeah.
just bad.
Yeah. It's like one of those classic, like, nobody is stopping you from writing this, but people are gonna have opinions about how you do it. Like,
Yeah.
that's just how life
And
works.
the
Like
fact
you'll
that
need
this
to
series is still going,
Are you
crazy.
serious?
Yeah, like a new book was published like a couple years ago.
Oh my
Like
god.
maybe like 2021 or something like that. I don't know. Cuz it's like a series of like connected series. So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
maybe not the like original series, but it's like in the same world. Connected series is still going. It's wild. So
Yeah.
hopefully in that time something has improved, but I will never know.
Yeah, it's like I'm not even committed enough to read spoilers that far into that series. Like I don't care that much.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What are you doing? Are you okay? Oh. Okay. He just like suddenly woke up and like was looking around. I was like, "Are you okay? What's happening?"
Says I want to choose something dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you being a good boy? Okay. All right. Oh, did you hear anything from Kelly? She gonna be able to join?
No. No, I haven't heard either way. So I
Okay.
imagine she's probably still like
Hmm.
recuperating. So
Yeah.
I mean, and I was kind of even a little surprised that she was like, "Oh yeah, like I'll be there for it," because like it seemed like awfully soon after.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Well, hopefully she's doing all right.
yeah. So we may have a surprise visit from Kelly, but I don't know in advance.
Yeah.
Hence the word surprise.
What are you doing? Stop. Okay. All right. Sorry, I just kind of like got sidetracked because I'm like switching colors. So
All good, all good.
actually, yeah, I probably have to get different needles if I wanted to use certain yarn for a hat. Because I have a bunch of yarn. I have this like nice yarn, but this is probably too fine. This is sock weight, which is like very fine.
Yeah. What needle size are you using right now?
This is definitely not for sock weight. These are, I think, 6 millimeter, so like they're pretty big. Like not big, but like in comparison.
Okay, I need to look up. I never use the millimeter chart. I always use.
Oh, I don't remember what size it said they are, but they look like this. This is the size.
Okay. Looks like they might be like a 6 or 7. Let me see. Gotta look up my little chart here. You'd think that I would just have naturally memorized some of this, but okay, 6 millimeter is a 10. Yeah, so those are a little bigger than like in general. I think if you were going to find an average knitting needle size, even though that's not like a thing really, I feel like 8 is a really common sort of middle of the road size. US number 8,
Yeah.
which is wait, that is how many? That's 5 millimeter.
Okay, so it's a little smaller than this. Yeah, these are ones that I just happen to have from something
Yeah.
else, I guess. I don't know why I have these.
Well, and when it's like a practice thing, it's like, yeah, like use what you have to. The point
Yeah,
is more
I might
about
also just
practicing.
use different yarn for this. I just was like, I have this. I think I got this yarn by accident. When I ordered like a bunch of yarn years ago, they just like included this in it, and I
It's
think it was
really pretty.
it's actually very nice. It is wool and silk, and I think that it was an accident. They didn't charge me for it, and I like don't think I was supposed to get it. Um, so and it's like super wash. Like this is probably yeah for like making socks that you could actually wash. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
80% wool, 20% silk. Like this is nice. But like I've never used it for anything because it's so fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it sounds like it'd be like a good shawl yarn
Mm,
because silk has like that's something that people use in shawls a lot.
yeah.
Generally sock yarn has like nylon in it,
Mm.
but I don't know, like there probably are people who like swear by wool and silk and I just don't know. Like I'm not
I
I'm
have no
not
idea.
deeply involved in the
I made one crochet sock one time. So I am not a sock making expert.
yeah. And I know that because I almost always use superwash because I hate the feel of like regular wool. It just really bothers me. It's like so itchy and I hate it.
Mm,
Um, so I pretty much always use superwash if I am working with like wool fibers, but I never actually put it in the washing machine. Like I still hand wash it. Which so far I haven't made that many things that it's like an issue. Like that it
yeah.
would be like a pain to have to hand wash them. Like it's been fine because I haven't made that many. But
Do you have like favorite fibers that you like to work with?
um yes, I do. So I do really like um I like cotton actually a
Hmm.
lot. And I know that there's a lot of different blends people use, and I still haven't really like explored that. Like I know that like woolen cotton is one that people use a lot, or cotton and linen I know is supposed to be very good because I guess like linen by itself is like kind of not scratchy exactly, but it's like it doesn't feel like cotton. So it's scratchier than that. But like when it's blended, apparently it is like really nice to use. So I probably want to try that at some point. But yeah, for like for non-wool fibers, I do really like cotton. Like I said, I use superwash wool a lot. I'm sort of like just barely starting to try out things that have, like you were talking about, the one that has silk in it. And I'm just like once in a while I'm like I'm gonna try something that's, but as you said, like it is like fancier, so that's another reason I haven't like gotten super into it. But
my thing is, I really want yarn that has like that kind of fuzzy texture to it, like
yeah,
mohair or something. But I guess, I don't know if it really makes sense anymore. I've always kind of avoided using like mohair or like any of those kind of things because I get, again, as I say, I'm like, maybe that doesn't make sense. So my mom is allergic to a lot of different fibers, like cashmere and mohair, like pretty much anything that's not like wool. Any like animal fibers she's allergic to. And so growing up, I would just like never buy anything that was like cashmere or something, because then like,
yeah,
my mom was allergic to it. And so in my head, I still go like, oh, well, I shouldn't make anything with this material. And I'm like, but I don't live with my mom anymore, so it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
even matter. I mean, I guess it could be a problem if I make something and then I wear it to visit her and she hugs me, and then maybe like that
yeah,
could be a problem. But like she's not like so incredibly allergic that like that small exposure, like she can't wear it. If I wear it, it's probably fine.
yeah.
Anyway, it's like a whole thing that like in my head I still go like, oh, can't do that. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think but this is also the thing, I don't think I'm allergic to any of those fibers, but I also don't know because I was never like exposed to them because
Right,
I
right.
don't know. So then I'm like, what if I
Yeah,
make a whole sweater and then find out I'm allergic to it?
yeah, yeah. Do like a little test patch or something, like a little like wristlet that you can wear.
Right, right. Yeah. So
Yeah, I am very curious if you do end up trying mohair or being able to try it, because I personally like hate the feeling of it, and I also hate that it is, most of the time when I see knitting projects that use mohair, you're like using a strand of mohair with something else.
mhm.
And I have realized, especially in the last few years where I've been like more actively trying out knitting new things, I
Mhm.
really hate knitting with multiple strands. Like it is
Yeah.
not fun for me. It does not give me any of the satisfaction or the good feelings that I usually get from knitting. So I have learned this about myself. So that's
Yeah.
another factor.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I actually, some of these sections I like doubled up because like this one is really too thin for, it's like much
Mhm.
thinner than all of the other yarns, and so I doubled it up. So like I don't think I mind it. I don't know if I'm like as excited about
Yeah.
knitting with
I
multiple
think,
strands,
I
but
guess I could, I think I'd be able to do like a hat. Like I know a lot of really pretty looking knit hats that are like marled. So it's like, you mix the colors throughout, and so it creates this really pretty like sort of fade or gradient. And a
mhm.
hat is small enough that I could probably, like, that probably wouldn't be an issue. But like I see so many people doing like entire sweaters with like
Mhm.
three strands held together, and I'm like, I could never. Like I am stressed even thinking about it. But I also just don't like how it feels. So if I see, if I see a pattern that is like meant to have yarn that has that little bit of fuzzy texture, I will like look really hard for a single strand yarn, not like single ply, but like one yarn that is like combed or
Well,
spun in such a way that it has those little fluffy bits, but it's not mohair.
I have this yarn that has now been discontinued, and I'm very upset about it because I wanted more of it. But so there's a sweater that I was in, that I'm technically still in the process of crocheting, but I've kind of like stopped. I haven't made progress on it in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, but I have this yarn that was perfect because you can see this is like the ribbing that I was doing for the
Yeah.
sweater.
Yes.
It's wool. I don't remember. I have like a bunch of things because I was gonna make an entire sweater and I just like didn't finish it. Now I'm gonna go see what is. 50% wool, 50% acrylic. So it's a blend. But it has like a slight fuzziness to it.
Yeah,
And I love it. And also this, I like this color a lot. I think
it
this
is
is like
very
a
pretty.
DK weight. Is it? I don't see. I don't know. It doesn't, I can't find where it says. I'd have to like open this up. I don't want to do that. But so
Yeah,
then I kind of was like, should I have 5 balls of yarn or 5 like skeins of yarn plus like half of one if I just stole it from the old project. If I was like, maybe I should just use this and like put it into a knit sweater because I don't know if I'm ever going to finish my crochet sweater.
yeah,
Also, a thing that I've been thinking about is that I'm like, I might just mix my like knitting and crocheting together because like I like crochet ribbing. It's very stretchy. It's and like crochet, I like actually crocheting a lot more. It's like really easy to do. And I was like, what if I just did all my ribbing in crochet? Because it looks the same.
yeah, yeah. I will say, even though like I obviously love knitting, and so every time you're like, I love crochet, I don't like the process of knitting. I'm like, okay, fine. But I
I
will
don't
say
dislike it.
okay, I guess I'll take that. Um, I will say that like knitting rib stitch is one of my least favorite things. Like I personally I hate it because I find it really boring and monotonous, but it's not like easy to get a rhythm because you're constantly flipping your yarn like back to front to back to
Exactly.
front.
And I've
So
seen other people complaining about this, and I'm like, why don't I just crochet the ribbing
I
on? Because I could
yeah,
do that.
I think
And I
that's a
feel
good
like it would go
idea.
so much faster. Crocheting ribbing is so fast.
Yeah. Nana also said she's using mohair right now. LOL. It gives the froggies a cozy look. Yeah, and I
That
think for
sounds like
like
it would be adorable.
yeah, and I think like for little critters and stuff that makes a lot of sense. I am always in
Is
awe of people
mohair
who it's like I am holding this itchy tiny thread alongside my actual yarn for an entire sweater's worth of knitting. I'm like,
does the
you are too
material end up
powerful.
being itchy?
For me, it is. For me, I really don't like how it
Yeah.
feels, but I guess a lot of other people do, or they wouldn't like. I don't know.
I don't know, because I love that like slightly fluffy, fuzzy look. But if it's
Yeah,
itchy, like I don't want to make something that's gonna be itchy because then I won't wear it.
right, right. Yeah, and so I have been actually able to find um several kinds of yarn that like sort of mimic that look, but they don't actually have mohair. So that's what I'm planning to use if I ever get to a
Well, you should
project where I'm like,
also tell me what those are. Like, text me
yeah,
what those are. Be like, I'm just gonna steal all of your knowledge instead of figuring things out for myself.
I am happy to do it.
Yeah. I also am trying to be better about like being consistent with like the technique for like, you know, knitting because I'm trying not to do the thing where like you like let go of the needle and like wrap it around because that takes more
Hmm.
time. And I'm trying to be better at like holding it and just sort of like catching the yarn.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if any of I'm not using any of the like terms for it, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I even like every time I see a post that's like, "Oh, do you do continental or do you do both?" It's like I really don't know what like style of knit
Yeah,
I
I think
do. Like
I
I will
think what I'm doing is
sometimes see
continental
okay. Like I will sometimes
because
see from like demonstrations. I'm like, okay, well I don't do that, but I don't know what I do.
well, which hand do you hold like the thing that you're like wrapping around, like the yarn that you're wrapping
I
around?
use my right because I'm right-handed.
So you're holding that piece of yarn in the same hand that you're holding the needle that you're moving all of the stitches onto.
Let me check. It's like I just do it without thinking about it. Yes. Yeah. But I actually like, so you were talking about like, you know,
Yeah,
if
so
you let
that's
go of the
that's the
needle.
one that's not continental. That's the other
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Is it
Because
English style? But then
continental,
it's
like I
also,
hold it in my left hand.
yeah.
So it's in the hand that I am like moving the stitches away from.
Okay. Well, and I also like, I have seen, um, I've also seen sort of like follow up, or I guess not follow up posts, but like response posts of people being like, I'm so tired of seeing the like, do you do continental or do you do like, you know, whatever it is?
Uh-huh.
Because there's like so many more, hello, Kelly. There's so many more
Hey,
ways
Hey.
of knitting. And so to act like that's the only choice is like, a, you know, because
right.
there's also like German style, there's I think like a Dutch style, there's like so
Oh,
many
there's like a
different,
Norwegian style that I've seen people
yeah.
talking about. I'm like, I don't see what the difference
And
is, but okay.
I'm also like not consistent because like one of the things that I see people doing a lot is like they'll knit with the yarn like wrapped around their finger like this, so they just have to kind of like throw it over
Right.
the needle. And most of the time I don't do that, but sometimes I get into a good rhythm with it, and so I do that. And I'm like, what is it? Is there a word for like I just switch styles in the middle? So who can say? Hello, Kelly.
Hi. I'm sorry. I feel like terrible.
Oh, you're all
No,
fine.
you're
I
fine.
yeah, no, I don't sleep very well. And last night was one of those nights where I just could not get comfortable. And so I was like, oh, let's take a nap at noon and I'll be up in time. And then wake up at 2. And I was like, oh, I was supposed to be live like an hour ago.
Sleep
It's
is more
totally fine.
important. Yeah.
Yes, especially like, yeah, after being at the doctor and everything. So all good, all good.
Leave it.
So we got knitting. Are you knitting or crocheting, Huck?
I am knitting. This was our like in a surprising turn of events.
We
I
pulled
started
her
learning
in.
how to knit. Literally last Sunday, I started learning how to do this.
Awesome. Because I was like, wait a minute, this is not look like crocheting. What's
Yeah.
happening here?
No, that's why we've been talking a lot about knitting, and I've just been like stealing information from Kara because I'm just like, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna steal everything that you know.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I wish I was knitting, but I think it'll be a little bit before I can knit.
Understandable.
Yes, totally fine. Nana said it was the full moon. She didn't sleep much either.
Oh,
I do
maybe.
know that can.
There was a
Yeah,
super moon.
that's right. That's right.
That's that.
Oh.
He's just
Yeah.
trying to eat the end of the scarf.
And my cat kept like I would finally get to sleep and then my cat would make a bunch of noise. So I wonder if the full moon also was affecting the cats.
Yeah, and they're like,
Like-
if we're up, you're up.
Yeah. They're like, we want to play with this paper bag right next to your bed at this moment.
Oh my god, yeah.
This is
Or
her-
they always find like the toys that have like noisemakers in them. Like
Mhm.
I sometimes I pick them up and I put them like where they can't get to them if it's been a problem. But it's like some of their toys are like little plastic balls that have jingly bells in them. And I'm like, what like sadist designed these? Like
Yeah.
have they never interacted with a cat before? Because like of course they're gonna play with those at like 4 in the morning. Like,
Yep. Or just like my one cat was just also he was like, I want you to pet me, and was like on top of me, and I had to keep pushing him away because he kept trying to lay on my right arm, and I was like, dude, I thought we've established that you were not allowed to lay on that side. Like, get off. And
says I remember nothing. No.
like, no, I didn't notice that you've been wearing this contraption all week.
Yeah. Nana also said continental style is good for crocheters, but apparently I
Hey!
crochet the knitting style.
Crochet
I mean,
the knitting style.
I think like so much of crafting it comes down to like, does it feel better for you? Does it work better for you? Then like do it. But
Yeah.
the toad needs a wire so I can pose it. So sewing on the legs feels like I'm Dr. Frankenstein. LOL.
I'm assuming she's making a
Kelly,
toad.
Nana was telling us that she's like making a cute little knit toad friend.
Okay.
So apparently she's at the like reanimating dead bodies stage of the project.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Is continental the one where you throw it over with your left hand? Is that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one where you hold the yarn in your left hand.
Okay. Because I learned that in my last class because I had always done from the right, and then we did the brim of the hat, and you were doing like knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and it got so confusing for my hands to move back and forth that quickly, and so I just ended up doing, because I purl with my left hand, and so then I just started also knitting with my left hand too.
I hate purling. Like, I cannot find a way to hold my needle that does not feel incredibly awkward. Like, it never feels easy or natural or comfortable. And I just am like, and I feel like I look really weird the way I'm holding it. I'm just like, I hate this.
Yeah, so a lot of knitters hate purling. Like, there are people who will rework an entire pattern so that they don't have to purl, which is like wild to me. But also, it does feel so different. So like, it could also be that you just started learning it, like, a week ago. You're like, I'm not a master purler yet. What is this? But I know,
but like, this is so easy that like I don't even have to move. I can just like hold this, like, doing like a regular knit stitch is so easy in comparison.
Yeah.
But also, Kelly, we were talking earlier about how it's like, well, the reason I'm learning how to knit is because I want to make a sweater. But I also was like, what if I knit the sweater and then I just crochet the ribbing? Because I don't want to knit the ribbing, but I can crochet ribbing, and it looks like, this is some ribbing that I crocheted a while ago, and like it looks like normal ribbing and it's so much easier.
Yeah. Because that was like the worst part of my hat. I'm like, this back and forth, because if it's just like I'm doing a row of knit and a row of purl, I'm like, okay, I can get in the habit. But when you go back and forth, I'm like, how does anybody get a habit out of this?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's one of the things I was saying to Huck too, is like, ribbing is one of my least favorite parts of knitting because it is monotonous and boring, but you can't get a rhythm in it. Like, it's so frustrating because, like you said, you're constantly switching back and forth and back and forth. So it takes forever. And even if you do like all the different styles of like knit stitch that are supposed to be more like efficient and everything, like, even if you do that, it still takes way longer than knitting or purling because you're doing both. You're going back and forth. You're like completely resetting your hands every single stitch. So I hate ribbing. So I support Huck's decision.
I might just Frankenstein together different fiber arts and be like, well, we're going to knit the body and then just crochet the ribbing, because that's what I feel like doing.
Well, I feel like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Were you wanting to knit it so it wasn't as holy? Is that like, because crocheting sometimes is a little more whole?
Yeah, I wanted to knit it for a few reasons. Like, one being that I just like the way knit looks for garments better in general.
Yeah.
I like crocheting for other things, but like just for like sweaters, I just don't like the way it looks as much. I've crocheted a couple of sweaters and they're fine, but I just like the look of knit better. But also, crochet is much denser and heavier. And so when I like have made sweaters, like I've even made like crop sweaters, so they're not even that long, but they're so heavy and they're so dense and they get so hot. And I just want something that's like a more normal sweater density.
Yeah, it's like so much yarn is used in crochet.
Yeah. And because like the way you do it, like knitting is much more like flat. It's more in like one plane, and crochet is a lot more like going around multiple times. So it's like just creating a much, like each stitch is just like a lot more yarn. So multiple reasons.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And because I kept seeing patterns for knit sweaters that I just was like, oh, that's so cool. I want to do that.
Yeah. I would like to do that. My next thing I want to learn is color work, and I would like, moving between the colors more. And like, I was supposed to take a class, but then I had to like back out because it was going to be like, it would have been like yesterday. And I was like, I can't, because my original surgery was supposed to have a faster recovery time, and then he had to do more when he was in there, and so I was like, okay, well now I can't knit.
Yeah. Have you thought about doing, like, I don't know if you had like a specific idea for what kind of color work you wanted to start with, but I think always a good one to start with is just stripes, so that you get used to just switching between two colors, and it's on different rows, so it's going to be easier to learn that than it, like, I only just started doing like color work within the same row, where you're like, yeah, you're managing two different colors,
Yeah.
and so you're going back and forth. So I have been doing some of that, and it actually it's like not nearly as complicated as I was always afraid it was, which is nice. But I did like regular stripe things for a while, and I feel like that was a good way to start it. But obviously, like, everybody's different, so if you want to start with something else, of course, that's
Well, if they don't do this class again, so this is the class. Let's see if I can get. This is the class. It's this hat.
Oh, cool.
So not just stripes. There is a little more design. If they don't offer that again in like January when I'm better, then I might just watch videos and do something more basic. But I like taking classes for things like that, because then I feel like I can ask all the like questions when I'm confused and lost, and
yeah.
And they also like help me when I mess up. Like when I did that hat, I had to go into the store 3 different times when I know I messed something up, but I don't know what it was. And they just like, because you're taking the class through the shop, they just fix it for you and like tell you what you did wrong.
That's great.
It is nice, yeah.
So what are you making, Kara? You're counting. Never mind.
No, that's okay. It was more just counting for my own information, because this is not at all like counting oriented. Like, I'm just knitting back and forth because what I am working on. So I don't know if you guys remember, I was telling Huck this earlier, is like, I think at one of our craft sprints I was working on that little decoy blankie for my cat Lego, because he loves to get his cute little paws and claws all over my knitting and like snag it and unravel it, and it's very stressful. Although I understand why he does it, because like, of course, cats like yarn. He's probably like, you're stupid. Why would you put this here? Like, why would you have yarn in the house with me? So anyway, so I made a little decoy blanket so that when he gets in my knitting, I'll like put that down for him, and it usually works, which I'm thrilled about. He will like go over and he'll like lay down, or like he'll make biscuits on that instead, which is great. And so now my cat Petey has like, every time he's over by Lego's blanket, he's like sniffing around on it, and he'll lay down and he'll just barely put his front paws on the blanket. Like, he's like, this is nice. So I'm making Petey a blanket too, so he doesn't feel left out.
So he's not like, I'm sneaking onto this blanket.
Yeah, I'm like, you also can have a blanket. I'm sorry. Because Petey is by far my cat that is the most chill around knitting. So I didn't think of it as like, oh, I need to have a decoy for him. So this is just a little happy blanket for him.
Well, that's good. And then are you doing your sweater now, Huck, or is this practice?
No, this is just practice. I mean, I guess it's turning into a scarf just because I'm kind of just going.
Yeah.
But as I've said, it's very ugly. I'm like switching between colors just to like practice, because I'm just using scrap yarn. So I'm just sort of testing out like different yarns and stuff. So like, it's not pretty. I'm just sort of messing around with it. But yeah, so this is just practice, so I can like practice a really basic like stockinette stitch and having like decent yarn tension, try out different yarns that I have. I was saying I might try doing like a hat next, just to like, I might, so that I can maybe practice ribbing and maybe practice like decreasing or something at the top. But then I might like jump into doing a sweater. Like I was telling Kara that I was just like, I feel like people make such a big deal about making sweaters, but I'm like, it can't be that hard. I could probably do it.
Oh my God.
I guess what's the worst that could happen is you have to like give it to a child because it doesn't turn out big enough. I mean, like, that's probably
like the worst that could happen is that I get frustrated and give up. But like, that's not that bad. Like, it could end up being a waste of money if I buy a bunch of materials and then don't use them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I mean, you could always use them for other stuff though if you unravel it.
That's also true because I do other things. So I could always, it's not like this is the only thing that I use yarn for. Yeah. Or yeah, I mean, I guess I could make a really ugly sweater that I put a lot of work into, but I never wear because it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are options, but like those aren't that bad. I'm not worried about that, you know? Like
Yeah.
I've learned so many different crafts over the years that like the first few times you do stuff, sometimes it's just bad. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why I'm doing like one step before the sweater. That's my next project that I did start before the surgery and I need to get back to when I can, is like, it's a vest though. So it's like, okay, if it doesn't work out, I did not spend all the time making sleeves.
Yeah. Or even just the like the drop shoulder sort of like all of that sort of construction and everything. Like, yeah, making sleeveless tops can be really nice for that. So I feel you.
I also was thinking like in terms of like a style of a sweater, like it sounds like most of the issues that people have with sweaters is like the shaping around the shoulders and the sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have made crochet sweaters, I have done very basic ones that didn't really involve a lot of shaping. It was really like front, back, pretty much a square, and then you put ribbing around like the neck, and then sleeves also just rectangle that you sew together. And like, yeah, you get a little extra like stuff around the shoulders, so it's not as like perfectly fitted. But I don't mind that because it like if you make it a little bit slouchy sized, then it's just sort of like part of the slouchiness.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe you just do something like that where it's like it doesn't need as much shaping, you know? It's just sort of like rectangle, rectangle, rectangle.
Yeah. And if it's slouchy, a lot of things can be forgiven because it's supposed to be hanging more.
Casual.
Yeah. We're not going for
maybe. Yeah. Maybe, Huck, though, that could be why you're like, man, everybody's always whining about how sweaters are hard. And then it's like, yeah, if you skip the parts that are really hard, then I guess you could like.
Yeah, but you still end up with making a sweater. Like it's still
I know, but it was just funny. It was just funny because when you were talking about it, you're like, everybody always complains. Like everybody always makes such a big deal about it. Like,
I just in general am like, I can do this.
What was that?
I just also in general am like, I can do this.
Just do it. You have confidence. That's good, you know? Just
and then maybe my confidence will be crushed. Like, who knows?
Yeah. But at least you have tried it. Like I have been kind of like tiptoeing around it. I'm like, oh, I'm scared. But at least you just go in there and do it.
Well, there is a yarn store that's like relatively close to me. It's not like super, super close, but it's not like horribly far away. That does have classes. And like normally I'm generally very like self-taught with my crafts. I just sort of throw myself into it. But I was like, well, maybe I should try actually taking a class because this seems like something that might warrant a class. Anyway, I was thinking maybe I would try doing a class for, because they have one that's specifically for sweaters. So I think maybe I could try that. Although I might have to take one other class as like a prerequisite. So, but that's okay. Also, you know, crafting in general, I feel like so many of my hobbies are very solitary. So it's like, well, maybe nice to like have a class where I can meet other people, just be me and the old ladies knitting sweaters.
Well, last time when I took my last class, there were no old ladies. It was like a man that was like probably 25 and that like he had only been out of college for a few years, and then a lady that was probably around my age, maybe a little older. So I was like, yeah, well, just like, you know, the younger crowd getting into the craft.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe, who knows? We'll see.
No, but when I go to like my quilting guild, There's like maybe 4 of us that are under 60. So yeah.
Well, it's like I think we even like in our crafting crew message, I feel like we like shared this or talked about this, but there's like a running joke or a meme about like me like crying through a project because I don't understand. And then it's like a 75-year-old lady who will very kindly explain the exact thing I need in front of like her house in horrible like video and sound quality and everything. And I'm like, the number of times that my project has been saved by some random middle-aged lady just very kindly explaining something to me on YouTube is like,
Yeah.
So I kind of love that, Kelly.
Yeah, it is nice to have like a font of wisdom to tell you like when you need a little help.
Yeah. I loved seeing in Kelly one of your like knitting or your crafting and like reading updates. I loved seeing the like quilt progress you were doing because like I don't quilt, and so it's really cool to see like how you pair the colors and like, you know, how the even just like seeing how you like put the shapes together is like so cool to me. So
oh, I should show you guys like one of the, because I know in that video where I had the one with the cute little animals, I didn't pick like a great example, and they're so cute. I gotta share it. Hold on.
Yes,
they're just over here, so I just need to grab it. All right, I'm gonna find some of the really cute ones because I picked like the end row where it didn't have as much variety, but there was some that were so adorable. And this was like, I went on that quilt retreat, and I feel like I spent the whole time just like cutting to try to get like things lined up because it was so satisfying to do stuff like this where I made the little peepholes.
Yes, that's so cute. He's a little peekaboo.
Yeah, because there was only like, you know, a couple. This was only like 1 inch and 3/4, so you have to like find and line it up perfectly. So like sometimes I put like a little bird.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I was like taking forever to do this cutting, but I felt like it was worth it to get all these cute people.
Absolutely.
And then like the bigger squares, it's like I had to center all the animals to make them.
Yes.
So I could cut them out and get the actual animal in there.
That's very cool. Nana's also very excited about the frog. She also said, I feel so proud when I go to the yarn shops. Like, yes, I am carrying the fiber art tradition. It's true. Like, I think, I mean, I talk about this like on my channel a lot as well, but it's like, I get so emotional about like women's work and like women's crafts and just the idea of like how much they are, like how important they are, even though they don't always get treated that way. And I think I talked about this book before too, but like Threads of Life by, I have to remember her name, Claire Hunter, I think. It is so good. And it's specifically about embroidery, but I feel like a lot of the like impact of the book is going to be the same, even if you don't embroider, if you do like another craft, or even if you maybe don't do a craft. But it is also a phenomenal audiobook to listen to as you craft, because the narrator just did a really beautiful job. The author is Scottish, and the narrator who does the book is also Scottish, and she's got a really beautiful voice to listen to, but it also is just like, it really was like very much a Kara book, because I got really emotional just like thinking about like the women in history who like did this thankless work. Like the opening chapter, the introduction, is about like the very famous Bayeux tapestry, and the fact that like we don't know anything about the women who actually sewed it. Like everything about the tapestry is like, well, here, like this horseman is probably this important man, and like this person was probably like related to this person. And it's then there's like this little tiny like placard that's like, yeah, it was probably made by like some nuns or something. We don't know. Like, and it's just like,
And
it's
the
wild.
hours of work
So good.
that would have been put
Yeah,
into it.
like days. Like it's just, it's incredible. And she talks about like how fiber crafts have been used through different periods as like resistance and like as healing, and like it's so good. I'm putting the title in the comments.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, less like grand scope, but my grandma on my mom's side did a lot of like, she knit, she sewed, she did a lot of stuff, but she passed away when I was like 6.
Mhm.
And sometimes when I show my mom stuff that I've made, she's like, oh, your grandma would have loved this. That like, she would have thought it was so cool that you do all of this stuff because she knit and she sewed, and like she would love this stuff that you make and everything. Like, and that's just like such a, I don't know, that's always like a fun thing that, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's like exactly like you said, it's not as big a scope, but like it is. That is like the scope that we're
Yeah.
talking about, is
Yeah.
like feeling connected to these women that you never knew, and even to women who like you have no family relation to, but you're part of this, I don't know, this like community. And the one of the things that the book talks a lot about is like the difference between crafts and art. And probably not surprising that art is usually done by men, and crafts, which are less important, are things that women do more traditionally. And so like I mean, she would describe these like absolutely incredible pieces like that were made by needle painting, she called it, which is essentially like, from what I understand, it's like incredibly detailed embroidery and very like dense embroidery, where like it's just like covered in thread, and so it really is like a painting. Like you can't even see almost where the different stitches are because it's all together. And she would describe these pieces that are just like, even just hearing about them is incredible, like without even seeing like an image of one, and describing how like, oh yeah, the museum that showed them, like it fell out of favor, nobody really cared kind of anymore. And I'm like, no, this is wrong. This is like, ugh. So even though it makes me like angry to hear those parts, the fact that we have a book about it, that we have a lot of books about it now, and that we are starting to pay attention to it is, I think that helps a lot.
I think I can't remember if that's the book that I was gonna get, or if it was the Fabric of Civilization. Did you also read that?
I haven't yet, but I think I got it somewhat recently, but I definitely want to read it because yeah, I love like clothing history, textile history, all of that.
I'll have to put that one on there.
Yeah, it is really, it's so good. And I thought she did a really good job too of like connecting the like emotional impact of what she's talking about, and like, more personal examples to like historical periods and to like specific events. Like she talks about how embroidery was actually used to treat PTSD in World War I soldiers, and that was like a big deal because at that time it was still like that's a girl thing. Like what do you mean you're doing embroidery, like kind of thing. But that made such a huge difference for soldiers that were suffering from shell shock. And like it's like a literally healing use of craft, like of fabric art or fiber art. And she talks about in World War II, like some of the prison camps in the Pacific Theater, and how like women would like basically leave their names, like sign their names on like scraps of fabric. Like it's such a good book. Highly recommend if that wasn't clear. And especially like if you listen to it while you're crafting, it just like perfect. combination.
You mentioning shock made me think of the other day. My 9-year-old, she likes to watch TED Ed videos. The the ones that are like the TED, they're by the TED, organization, but made for kids, or some of them have more adult themes. And she was watching one about hysteria and the history of hysteria. And you could just see her little feminist growing. Like she was just like, as they were talking about it, she was just like, what? And she was just so upset and frustrated about the history of hysteria and what was done to women, and them thinking about the womb traveling, and that's what made women crazy. And they, in that video, they would talk about how in later years they also created the male version of hysteria and called it shell shock because it had a much more masculine name. But they were also treating that in ways that was not appropriate to actually actually seeing it as mental health. But it was just kind of hilarious watching her watch this, and I'm like, yes, girl.
Yes.
With the patriarchy.
Kelly, I feel like you were doing such a good job with your daughters, because all of these stories about them being like, this is not right, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah, that's right. You need to learn about the history so we know not to repeat it.
It's I don't know if you know that part in Wrinkle in Time where I think it's Mrs. Whatsit says stay angry, little Meg. You will need all of your anger. And I'm like, yes, stay.
Yeah. Have the fire. Did you see that Robin Wall Kimmerer has a new book coming out on Tuesday?
No.
I did not know this until I got my local bookstore does their monthly newsletter, and they were highlighting her book Bring Sweetgrass as a popular book for Christmas presents. It's popular to give as gifts. And they're like, and if you've already read that, pick up her new book coming out this Tuesday. I was like, what? New book? I have not heard of it.
What's the new one about?
It's called Service Berry. And it's I think it's I don't know if it's just about service berries or about the relationship of using berries. I can see. I don't know. I just went ahead and ordered it, and I didn't really look into it.
Yeah, you're no questions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I hadn't heard of that either.
Yeah. So she was talking about how she harvests service berries alongside the birds, and then the ethic of reciprocity that lies at the heart of the gift economy. So how do we learn from the plant world to reimagine what we value most? And so she's it's basically about the economy and nature. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, cool. That sounds cool.
Yeah. Well, that is very exciting.
Yeah.
My daughter has arrived, and she is putting the cat in the...
Brought a kitty.
It's very important.
I'm sure this cat really wants to be here right now. He's like, let me go.
Versus that one obviously just came out, but are you guys looking at 2025 anticipated releases yet?
No,
not really. I realized so the two signs that I was like, wow, I have really not been plugged into books coming out like I usually am. The two signs were, one, when I looked at my Goodreads want to read, I would only have 1 or 2 books added across a couple months. And that never happens. I'm always adding way more books than that. And then the other thing is that I've had a couple of favorite authors come out with books that I didn't even know were out. So not even just this example, but Hannah Alkaf has, I actually just bought it, has a book that came out very recently that is The Hysterical Girls of Saint Bernadette's, I think is what it's called, which also deals with hysteria. Or that
Bernadette was like, what?
Yeah, yeah. And I like love her books, and I normally would have like pre-ordered that, and I didn't know about it until it came up when I was on like another bookshop page. Like,
what's it called? The hysterical
Girls of Saint Bernadette's is, I think, what it's called. And it sounds like from the synopsis that it's going to be a combination of obviously talking about the concept of hysteria and how it's used against girls and women, but also it sounds a little bit similar to like the dancing plague, which was super interesting. So I think it sounds really, really good, and I'm very excited to read it. But I'm like, I can't believe I didn't know about this. So in answer to your question, Huck, no, I do not. I have not been really like paying attention to 2025 for books.
I know. Yeah, I'm the same. I keep like things have been coming out like recently that I'm like, I didn't even know that was coming out. So I obviously wasn't doing my research in 2024.
Yeah.
So I have not. I don't even think, because usually I have a I was just checking my Goodreads. Yeah, usually I have a like folder, or as soon as I start looking for new releases, I create like a folder for the next year, and I do not have a 2025 releases full
yeah
area.
Well,
so
even seeing or maybe I was talking to Hannah and she mentioned it, but like somehow it was brought to my attention that Frances Harding has another book coming out, and I'm like, I didn't know that. I am fake. I am a fake fan. What's that?
Next year? Because I knew she had one this year.
Maybe it's this year that I'm thinking of. It's the one that looks similar to the illustrated one that she just came out with.
Because this was because the last one I saw was the illustrated one.
Yeah. So it's Island of Whispers came out first, and then The Forest of a Thousand Eyes came out this year.
Right.
And I didn't know about it. It came out in September, and I still haven't gotten it, and I'm like, I'm fired. I'm fired.
Wait. So is it going to be similar to Island of Whispers, where it's more like a fairy tale?
Yeah. That's what it
looks like. Well, now I got to put that on my list.
I know.
Yeah. Good boy.
Oh, Bernadette saw your dog. It was...
Oh, yeah, this is Merlin. He has been trying to steal my yarn and or knitting needles this whole time. Hold on, he can...
Look at your baby.
This is Merlin.
It's a lie. I have never done anything wrong in my life.
Yeah, he believes he is incredibly logical and also a perfect angel. It's like everything I do makes sense. Completely logical, never irrational, and also never did anything wrong in my life.
Yep.
And he is trying to eat a piece of yarn right now.
His mouth full of yarn. He's like, I've done nothing wrong. Like,
yeah. Well, this is the closest I've let him get to my box of yarn this whole time, and so he was taking the opportunity.
I think we're seeing why. Yeah.
Yeah.
That cat have already stolen all of it. Taken all the yarn already.
Oh, have you seen like the pictures of like the inside of the Frances Harding book? They're so cute.
I haven't. I just saw that it existed, and I was like,
or is it like a chapter book with illustrations?
It looks like it's similar to Forest of Whisper or Island of Whispers, where it's... Let me see how many pages it is, because it looks like it has not full... It's only 128 pages, and this is an example of like one of the pages where there's lots of text, but like a full picture too. So I think it's going to be just similar to the Island of Whispers,
where it's kind of like a novella almost in terms of length. I feel like, but
that like so there'll be some full page, but then some like where there's a lot of text and stuff. So I have added that to my list. I need.
Yeah. Oh, I assumed you knew about that, because I think I knew about that one. I would have told you if like I knew. But
well, we know.
So does that mean, Huck, you're staying more on top of the new releases?
A little bit. I'm not like I am starting to pull together like 2025 releases. And it's shaping up to be like, it's going to be an interesting year for me, at least. There are some authors that I really like who have books coming out. So like Juliet Marillier has a new book coming out. Tessa Gratton has a new book coming out. Neon Yang. What else? I had a whole list of things. Like there are a lot of things from like authors that I like. Kay Ankrum, she has a book almost every year that comes out, but I'm still excited about it. I'm starting to wonder if I should like consider Kay Ankrum like a favorite author or something, because honestly, I just like everything that she writes.
Yeah. I feel like there is this category of favorite authors where it's like every book from them isn't necessarily 5 stars, but I consistently enjoy all their books and I get so excited when they have a new one. So like I would consider that a favorite.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with her stuff, because like most of her books I probably end up at like 4 to 4.5 stars, but like I just like everything. So you know.
I've kind of changed the way I view favorite authors to kind of that, because I was thinking about like T. Kingfisher, which I was like hesitant at first, being like, oh, how can I say she's like one of my top favorite authors when there have been books by her that I rated like 3 stars, 2 stars. But then I think I always want to read everything she writes. So it never has like kept me, like I'm always looking forward to it. And even those ones I rated lower, I still like enjoyed when I would open it. I would have that feeling of like, I am back in like her writing, you know, even if I ultimately didn't like that specific book, like, yeah.
I don't know if this is, maybe this sounds weird, but like I find that there are some times where I am almost more in the mood for a 4 and a 4.5 star book than like a 5 star, because there's not like the pressure almost.
Yeah.
And so there, especially when I like am not reading as much, like this year I definitely haven't been, there is something that is sort of like even more enjoyable or at least like more comforting when it's like, yeah, this might not be like a life-changing 5-star favorite, but it's going to be really, really good. And that's what I want right now.
Yeah. I feel like I've kind of also just expanded like what I consider 5 stars. I feel like I was too stringent before, and I'm like, who is this helping? Let me just say it was 5 stars. I liked it. It was great, you know?
Yeah.
And but also, I think that I don't know, like how people define what a favorite author is kind of interesting. I had something else I was going to say and I forgot what it was. But yes. But yeah, those kind of authors where it's like you just sort of like everything that they write. Oh no, it was about star ratings. I especially sometimes after I read like I don't want to read like multiple 5-star books in a row. Like after I read a 5-star book, I'm like, I emotionally need a break from like loving something this much. And so I intentionally want to read something that's like 3.5 to 4 stars. That's the range that I want right now. Something that's like slightly above mediocre, up to like good, but not anything I'm going to be like too excited about.
Yeah, it gets too intense.
Yeah, it does. And especially because like for me, I think a lot of 5-star or favorite books, it's like they tend to be ones that are very like emotional, like just in the story and in the characters and my attachment to them and everything. So it also feels sort of like a practical thing where it's not just like, oh, in my head, I'm like, I don't think I'm ready to have another favorite. It's like, I think physically I like need a rest. My body needs a rest.
Some of my favorite books, like part of my review for them is like, I was so stressed while I was reading this. Because I was so emotionally invested in it that I was like, I was so stressed.
Yeah.
I remember finishing the second book, I think it was the second, in the Subversive series, and I literally, like, I had to put the book down at the end and, like, take a walk because I had to, like, decompress from my, like, stress and anxiety and emotions. I was like, I just need a moment. I need a break. And I was like, this is great. People should read it. Also, I can't handle any more right now. Like,
yes.
Yeah, like I'm reading the Diviner series, and I've been kind of like sucked into it this fall. And I would not call them 5 stars because I still find the like 1920s lingo like super cheesy and they're so long. But I am just like completely absorbed and just enjoying the process. And so I'm like, well, this might become like a favorite series, even if it's not a 5 star series. That I'm just
Yeah,
obsessed with reading it right now, even though I
yeah.
see that it is not 5 stars for me.
That's like I always love the question in the book series tag that's like a series greater than the sum of its parts. Because I think there are series like that where it's like sometimes I didn't rate any book 5 stars in the series. They were all like 4, 4.5. But like this is one of my favorite series. Like I do consider this a 5 star series overall. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's how I felt about like the Tensort series by Neon Yang. I remember part of my review was like, I enjoyed each book, but really like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like, like the whole thing was fantastic. Each book was good. The whole thing was fantastic.
Yeah.
yeah.
I felt like that way about the Alana series because there's a couple books in there that I was like, okay, these were definitely not 5 star books. The pacing is off and all that stuff, but like in total, following the character of Alana is just like a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that a lot with Tamara Pierce books, that I feel like some of her books, just the pacing is just not what I want. Like there'll be just times when I'm like, okay, this section is super slow. And then all of a sudden we have a lot of action in a row and it just like is unbalanced for me. But like in general, I'm going to enjoy the book overall.
Yeah.
Or the series.
Yeah. Yeah, I think release wise, 2025 seems like it's shaping up to be something interesting. So I'm very excited that the book that Tessa Gratton is coming out with is an adult fantasy, because like I love her, like the Queens of Innisleer, which is so far her only adult fantasy. And I like Strange Grace, but then which is YA. But other than that, I've been kind of like about most of her YA. And so I'm excited to see her do another adult fantasy because I'm just wondering maybe whatever it is that to her is like the difference between YA and adult, maybe I just like her, whatever it is that she does for adult fantasy better than what she does for YA fantasy. Like, you know?
I really feel like there's a lot of adult writers who are like, oh, I could write middle grade or I could write young adult. It's easier. And it's like, no, it's different. Like it's just because like I was watching one of Ashley from Bookish Realms, like older, not older, like I went to like her backlist. I just mean I am so behind on watching booktube stuff that it was older. But she was talking about like how so many authors think because they can write like a genre and an age category that they can just sort of like bounce around, and that's like actually a really specific skill set that not everyone has, and that's okay. Like you might be like an amazing author for like romance or for like contemporary fiction or whatever, but it doesn't mean that you can translate all of that into completely different kinds of books. And I feel like especially when it's like an author who writes an adult, like wanting to get into like middle grade or young adult, I feel like a lot of times it sort of has this like subtext to me of like, oh well, anybody can write for kids. And it's like, no, because some of the like most mediocre or disappointing middle grade books I've read have been from authors who are very well loved for other things. It's like just because it's for kids doesn't mean it's easy to do. And I think that's like, yeah, just like a lazy way to look at it. But
yeah, I mean, in the case of Tessa Gratton, she started out with YA and has then just like, she's mostly a YA author who wrote one adult series, but her adult series happens to be my favorite.
Yeah.
Also, I am, in terms of like switching genres and stuff. Talia Hibbert, you know, is, I don't know, I don't think it's coming out next year, but I get her like newsletter, and she has talked about how she's actually like paused a bunch of the like rom-com, like contemporary romance books that she was like planning to write, because she's gotten kind of tired of writing those, and she's working on like a romantasy book.
Interesting.
And I'm like, I don't know how that's going to go, because with her style, like I really like obviously her contemporary romance. I'm not sure her style of writing romance is going to translate well to romantasy. I mean, maybe she'll adapt more. You know, I don't know how much she's going to change it or not. And I'm not sure if I'm going to read it, because I don't really like romantasy, but I do like her other stuff. So I'm very conflicted.
Yeah. It's like every time Naomi Novik announces a book, I'm like, please be another fairy tale. Like,
right. So like, that's really your wheelhouse.
Yeah, like I love Spinning Silver so much, and I also really liked Uprooted, although everybody who complains about it is 100% correct. Like, I liked it despite all evidence to the contrary that I shouldn't have liked it. I really, really like those, and I enjoyed the first Temeraire book, but I never cared to continue. I don't care about her Deadly Education series, and whatever, I think she had like another book announced relatively recently, but it was also not a fairy tale book, and I'm like, Naomi,
a collection of short stories that just came out.
Okay, maybe I'll try that. But it's like, I know it is such a like selfish way to view like an author's choices to write, but I'm like, can't you write what I like?
Yeah. Oh my God. Have you seen Maggie Stiefvater has a new book coming out next year? And I'm like, I'm going to read it, but I'm not excited.
I haven't. No, I don't really follow her. So.
Okay. So it's her first adult book. And I have seen I have seen her make some posts about how she was like reading a lot and like kind of doing research on like what does it mean to like write adult, because before this she's only done YA. So like, well, I appreciate that she's like thinking about like, what is it that I am doing differently that makes me think like that's like this is going to be different, that it's adult, it's not going to be like everything else that I've done. So I appreciate that. However, it is, I don't remember the whole plot, but essentially it's like set in like a hotel during like World War II, and there are, I could be wrong, but my understanding of what the plot is that they have like captured like Nazis, and before they're like transferred over to like wherever it is they're going, they have to stay somewhere. Like for some reason they're stuck in this one place. And so they have to like use this hotel to like house the prisoners before they go somewhere else. And the main character is this girl who works in the hotel. And then I think there's like a love interest who's like one of the investigators.
Okay,
and
I was like, please don't say that.
I was so scared.
I was stressed. It's okay, keep going.
That's all I know about it, really. And I'm just like, this sounds very different from anything else she's written, and not in a good way. And two, this doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
I am not excited about that. Like like I said, she's not an author that I really like specifically keep up with anyway. So it's not like I would expect that every single book she announces, I'm like, yes, I want to read. But yeah, that's not, I don't know. Especially like,
I think
the times we live in, like, Maggie, really,
this is the thing. It's like having Nazis, it's like it can get dicey really easily, but also it's very overplayed. Like I personally am also just not a fan of like World War II historical fiction. Like it's not for me. But even so, it's just like I don't know what the obsession is with World War II. Like I have theories, but there is this obsession with it where it's like 90% of historical fiction, it feels like, is World War II. And it's like, why? There's so a whole lot of other time periods, people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It really, there has to be like a very specific thing that interests me about a book to make me overlook that, because like
it's a thing that usually like specifically turns me off of a book, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't
I'm
remember
gonna
the
give
last
it a
time
try because I do like her stuff a lot of time, like most of the time, but
Yeah.
I'm very suspicious.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I read a World War II book because it kind of felt like, oh, I've read those. They're,
Yeah.
And
I
there
mean, I guess
better
there's
not be a Nazi romance in this.
Oh
I
Yeah,
don't
God,
know
please
if there is,
no.
but there better not be.
no,
Yeah.
that would be
Don't
horrible.
you
Like,
dare, Maggie. Yeah. I think I think I've read a couple over the last few years that I did really like. The War That Saved My Life, I finally read those books, and I genuinely did really, really like those. And I was like, okay, I see why people like cite this as one of their favorites. Especially the second book, I thought was excellent. So I read that, and I feel like there was like one other book that included some World War II stuff that I still like. I loved the book, and I can't remember what it was now, but like, yeah, I don't read it super often. Like I read more of it when I was younger, just because like, again, yeah, there is so much historical fiction that involves that, and because I enjoyed historical fiction, and I was like, I still was learning how to like find books, you know, like how to like find things I was interested in. I think I just ended up reading more of it than I do now. But like, yeah. It's like there's also a part of it too where I'm like, okay, why specifically did you feel like I have to tell this story and I have to set it here? Like in this time, in this like setting kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories where I'm like, I don't think this needed to be a World War II story.
I think that some of the things that, like some of my theories about why people like it so much include that I think that people like that it feels like a very like black and white, good guys, bad guys kind of situation. That has a lot of like built-in drama to it. But I think that people like the simplicity of it, that like we know who the bad guys are, and then there are always the people who want to then like sympathize with the bad guys.
Yeah.
So they also, but because there's this like clear delineation, like it, you know, I think people like the kind of uncomplicated nature of it. I think also, especially for like Americans love World War II. And I think it's because they like to really pat themselves on the back about like, we were so good. Like we came in and saved the day. And it's like, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
But so I think it's a time when people felt like we were very much on the right side of history. So it also gives like a white knight feeling that people really like. So there are a lot of aspects to this, but those are some parts of my theories of why people really like World War II.
It makes sense because so much war isn't necessarily like that was a war where it's like, okay, we've got these people are obviously doing wrong things,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going against them. Where there are some wars where it's like, well, we're just fighting over land, or we're fighting over whatever, and you're like, well, I don't really want to support either. Like there's not like good and bad sides. It's just war.
Yeah, and it's like that's one of the reasons why I think World War I historical fiction can be so interesting, is because so much of it is like, why are we here? Like, and I get why that is not a satisfying like emotional experience, but I think it's important. And I think like the fact that so many World War I stories, like especially I feel like older ones that were written, like I think of like All Quiet on the Western Front, which I hated at the time, but like looking back, I'm like, oh, I see why this book is important and why it's still taught. But like I think with different time periods like World War I think one of the important things that those stories have is like this understanding that just because your side is fighting somebody, it doesn't mean the people you're fighting are bad or that you should be doing it. And the fact that like World War I happened
for most people.
What's that?
That's too complicated for most people.
Yeah,
I know, and it's like I think you really hit on it, Huck, when you were saying like it's World War II in a way is such a simple conflict to write about, which is not to undercut how horrible it is, but like
Right.
it's very
I think
straightforward about who's good, who's bad. Like
Yeah.
we were on the right side, go team. Whereas with a lot of other conflicts or time periods, it's like,
Yeah. Also, I think that kind of as you were talking, it was making me think about how a lot of other wars are very like the reasons behind them and like the different sides, like the kind of blame for it can be very like dispersed. And I feel like with World War II, it feels very clear, like there's a big bad, kind of almost like in a fantasy book where it's like, well, there was one really bad guy.
yeah,
And then he kind of just like got everyone, like, you know, it feels like there's one big bad to fight against, instead of like, well, there's a lot of complicated different things of like other people having various opinions and like, you know, so yeah, there's a lot of simplicity to it that I think appeals to people.
Well,
I
and
think
even
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I also think it fits like a perfect like time period in terms of relation to today, because it's long ago enough that there's not as many people alive that actually were like serving or like in it, you know, but close enough that it doesn't feel like we're reading about like, you know, the Trojan War, you know, like we're like it's relevant enough that it like you see how that led to other things in history, but long ago enough. Like I think the Vietnam War, there's too many people that were really like had a lot of emotions and were in that, you know.
Yeah, it was also a much more complicated like situation than World War II. And there are a lot of people who are still alive who have very differing opinions and like we're on very different sides of things. Yeah, that makes sense too. I also think, as you're saying, kind of related to that in terms of time period, like I think for people who maybe like who, you know, they like it's close enough to our time that it doesn't feel almost like, oh, you're reading about a different world, you know. It's like old time, it's far enough in the past that it feels historical, it feels like a different time, it has that kind of like historical fiction feeling, but it's close enough that it's not like there's some, you know, if you read old enough like historical fiction set far enough back, it feels like you're reading a fantasy book, you know. So anyways,
well, and the other thing about like the oversaturation of World War II stories is that like even within that category, I feel like there is so much variety that could be taken advantage of that isn't. Like even so, for our classics club, one of the recent books we read was Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, which I was not excited about. But I ended up like, even though it's not a book that I would say like I loved this, or even like I really enjoyed this, there were things I got out of it that I'm glad I did, because I never would have picked it up by myself. And one of the things about it that was so interesting is that there's like a pretty big chunk of it that involves the bombing of Dresden in Germany. And like, that is something I knew absolutely nothing about, and how bad it was. And so this is like a World War II story that I'm like, this is a massive thing. Like, I think it was like, I forget what the death count was, but it was like comparable to some of the really famous, like attacks on civilian cities. Like, this was a big deal. And even the way that they described like the treatment of like the prisoners of war and like things like that is like, I hadn't heard of this before. Like, I didn't know that the bombing of Dresden was even a thing. And so that's something where I'm like, all right, this is a time period that feels like everybody's writing about, but there are these big gaps because we think of World War II stories as being basically like a certain kind of story. Or even the one that I read that wasn't set directly in that time period, but it was one, Kelly, I think you've read it too, Soul Lanterns, where it was set a couple decades after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And like, even though that is such a massive part of World War II, like the atom bombs and like nuclear war, like books don't really talk about that that much. I think because it interferes with our idea of being the good guys and
Right.
of like this being such a straightforward conflict. So that's one thing, is like even within World War II fiction, I feel like there is more variety that is not often taken advantage of. And then the other thing that I was going to say is like, oh wait, Nana's going to bed. Thank you, Nana. Thanks for hanging out with us. Congrats on finishing your adorable little toad. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna have to go in like 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good stopping point for us.
Okay.
I just distracted myself. What I saw Nina's
Are you
comment.
talking about more complicated parts of history, even related to World War II?
Right. Oh, yes. And so, and the other thing I was thinking is like even some of the like older conflicts, or like even more classic almost like time periods, like I'm thinking of like the French Revolution, you know, and so many authors have written about that. And like I'm thinking of like a lot of classic authors, like A Tale of Two Cities, of course. And it's interesting because even that, in a way, I think is a conflict that offers more opportunity for nuance than some of these others. Because like even though like Charles Dickens, you could absolutely tell that he was much more like pro aristocracy than like a lot of more modern writers I think would be. But even so, he was still writing in a way that like he was acknowledging that like the peasant class or the lower class in France, like they were being horribly abused and they were not wrong for wanting to do something about it, and they should do something about it. And so his kind of issue or commentary was like, well, like if you're executing children, maybe you should stop and think about that kind of thing. And so even like this conflict that is being written about by a Victorian author, like there is that sort of like understanding that it's not 100% simple, that it's not black and white. So I think that's interesting too, is like even some of these like, you know, somewhat we would think of them as like stuffy Victorians we're still looking at these issues, and like you can't just pick one side or the other. Like there's more going on than that. So yeah.
Like we went down like a whole rabbit hole about this.
I love it though. So keep us updated on Maggie Stiefvater.
Yeah, so got eyes on you, Maggie Stiefvater, and see how this goes.
Yeah.
I don't even know, like, usually I at least know the T. Kingfisher books that are coming out, and I don't even know that I know those.
She has one coming out next year. I don't remember what it's called, though. I've started a Goodreads shelf for... I have not read her most recent book, though.
Yeah, I've kind of been saving up a couple of hers that I am especially excited about.
She's a little hit or miss for me, so I'm like, I'm always interested in what she writes, but I also don't necessarily like run to read it right away.
Mm-hmm. I do have.
It's called Hemlock and Silver, the one next year. It is
already intrigued.
Saying it's coming out in August. It's Snow White.
Oh.
Ooh. I loved her Snow White retelling that was a short story. The one that's like Boar and Apples or something like that. I really loved that one.
Hold on. Did this say? 1 second.
Cool. Yeah, no, I haven't read A Sorceress Come to Call, but I think it's going to be like in my winter TBR because it feels like something I should just like read when it's cold out for some reason.
This might be in a Renaissance setting.
You got
at the end.
More Renaissance fantasy. I demand more Renaissance fantasy.
Well, it said aided by a taciturn bodyguard, a narcissistic cat, and a late Renaissance understanding of the scientific method.
What a good
I don't know if it's set in the Renaissance, like a Renaissance period, or like that's just the amount of understanding of the scientific method that he has. Like, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I never even do like a new releases shelf. I basically just keep adding them, and then when I want to check, I just sort by
Yeah.
publication date, which has served me pretty well, but it only works if I add stuff. Like,
Mhm.
I have a shelf like for each year for like releases. So I'm building my 2025 releases shelf.
yeah.
I don't know if it's really productive because once I like after that year, I never really go back to the shelf. So I'm not sure if I really need to keep them.
Yeah.
I usually do where once I always have one for the upcoming releases in that year. And then usually once I'm at like February or March of the next year, I just move all of those. Like when we get to February, March of 2025, I'll move all my 2024 releases to just want to read
That's a
and
good
then
idea.
delete that
Yeah.
shelf because I don't look at that shelf specifically to be like, oh, I need to make sure I'm reading 2024 releases. I just put them on my general want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also like I'm very conflicted about how much I want to prioritize new releases because there genuinely are like frequently so many books that I am excited about, you know, either from favorite authors or the premise just sounds like perfect. And it's not that I would like have to force myself to be interested, but I just don't like feeling, I don't know. I like reading backlist. I like
Mhm.
mixing it up, and like it would be annoying to me. Like when I looked at Goodreads Choice Awards, I was like, I literally have not read a single book on these. And on the one hand, I'm like, well, that's a little annoying to me because I would like to have an opinion on this, but also
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't want Goodreads bossing me around. Like I don't want to
That's the
like
problem.
yeah, I don't want to feel like I need to start like when I'm thinking of what I want to read, I don't want to feel like I have to go to new releases first, you know? Even though like nobody's making me do that, but I'm
Right.
still like resenting it.
Yeah,
So,
I was looking to see. I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've read 10 new releases, and only two, I think two of them were on the Goodreads Choice Award.
yeah.
So I
Yeah,
guess the
and
things I'm reading
I
other
think I
people.
only read one that was on Goodreads Choice Award. I was reading Don't Let the Forest In like as they announced the Goodreads Choice Awards, which is also wild to me that that book is included because it came out literally like days before the Goodreads Choice Awards were announced, which I'm like, I don't understand. One, how it was included, and two, like, how are people supposed to vote for it if it just came out? Nobody will have read
yeah.
it.
Is it like are they assuming it's only early review copies? Because that's kind of stupid. Like
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, I mean, honestly, the Goodreads Choice Awards never make sense, but like,
right. We all know they're a mess, but we still have opinions about them. Like,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I know that I always have sort of like varying levels of I don't know history. It's like the different years I have different numbers of new releases I've read. So it's not that it's like unusual that I haven't read that many because I think there's been one year where I truly felt like I had a good chunk that I could pick from. That was sort of like the exception. Uh, so it's not that I'm surprised exactly that I haven't read any, but it's just like I don't think it has happened before where I very literally have no books that I could vote for that I've read. Um, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm trying to think of even if the ones I had, if they would be ones I would vote for.
Yeah,
Maybe not. Yeah, so there haven't been that many. And I was like thinking I wasn't gonna do like an actual Goodreads choice like challenge, but I was like, well, maybe I should just try to read a book from each shelf just to because I haven't read many 2024 books. And there were some
yeah,
shelves I'm like, yeah, I don't want to read any of these.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, and they cut the middle grade category again, so like I'm already pissed off about the entire existence of these awards. So yeah, I just don't know that it would be. Yeah, I don't think it'd be a good experience for anybody if I tried to like read for them. So yeah. Goodreads. It's like there's so many things about the management aspect of Goodreads that I hate, but I like keep resisting moving to Storygraph because I actually just really like the way that Goodreads is like literally this is just a book tracker, and or you can sort of interact with people when they read books that you have opinions about. I'm like, that's what I want. I feel like Storygraph isn't really that, which is fine. Like that's not what they're trying to be, but it's like I don't know. I don't like that. I feel like I need to stick with Goodreads because it is pretty much exactly what I want for like this sort of thing. Like I know a lot of people complain about like, oh, the interface looks like it was done in 1997, and I'm like, I mean, maybe, but I started with Shelfari, so Goodreads still feels pretty fancy to me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mostly just want to be able to sort the books I've read. So,
Yeah.
and that's what I can do. So
I love the like stalk your friends reading shelf feature. Like, it's so fun, and it's so great when you're planning buddy reads. So
yeah, and I just want to be like, oh, I'm interested in this book. Has Kara read it? She has. This is what she wrote, and there we go.
Yeah.
Wait, are you?
There we go.
Are you muted, Huck?
I muted because Merlin was barking, and then I forgot. I use both Storygraph and Goodreads, and honestly, like I like Goodreads better. Like I guess what people's complaints are, but like essentially what you're saying. Like I just want something that I can find reviews easily, that I can see what other people that I know have reviewed, that I can track the books that I have or have not read.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like I don't want anything fancy. And I just feel like Storygraph doesn't do that as well. Like I can't even figure out really like the social aspect of Storygraph of like how to see other people's reviews.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just don't have books on like the certain books that I'm looking for, they're just not even there. And I don't know. I just don't find it as like easy to use. Like I guess they give you like the little statistics, which is good, but like
right. And I do like that they make it so easy to track reading challenges, like readathons and stuff. That's really cool. I'd like to see Goodreads do something like that. But
and they let you do half stars.
Yes, I do like that. And I like that there is I just like lost my train of thought in the middle. Anyway, what were you saying, Huck? I forgot what I was talking about.
Talking about Storygraph versus Goodreads. I like Goodreads better.
Yeah, and it's not like I want like a social media website. Like I don't want like
I don't use it that way.
book Twitter or anything. But I do like that Goodreads has the very minimal like social aspect where, like you said, Kelly, it's like easy to find if your friends have read a book.
Exactly.
Like that's one of the key pieces of what I like about Goodreads. And so the fact that Storygraph isn't really set up for that, like I just don't feel like I would get the things that I most appreciate like from Storygraph. I don't know. Like I there are other things I like about it. Like I love the data that it gives you, but I also don't appreciate how much I feel like the data, like it's based on what other people submit for books, right? So it's like it tells me that I prefer fast-paced books, and I'm like, friend, no. Like so it's like I love the idea of being told what kind of reader I am based on numbers, but I'm like, I don't think this is right.
Oh, I wish I could find it. There was this website that my mom sent me where you could list like books or authors that you like, and then it would tell you what kind of books you like or what kind of reader you are. And it was very interesting. Hold on, because I found, where did I put mine? Because I did it and it was really interesting, like what they said. Let's see if I can find. If I can find the website, I will send it to you.
Please do.
Oh, here. This is what they said about my reading. I have to figure out where the website is. But it said my keywords are enthusiastic, imaginative, curious, adventurous, and thoughtful. So they said this reader is passionate and excited about exploring a diverse range of genres and styles represented by the books and authors they listed. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm like, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I have a very specific taste.
Mm-hmm.
Imaginative, they have a vivid and creative mind that thrives on the rich world building, complex characters, and fantastical elements found in these books.
Mm-hmm.
Curious, always seeking new and unique narratives. This reader is open to exploring different perspectives and themes, as evident in their interest in a variety of genres, such as fantasy, historical fiction, and speculative fiction. I think speculative fiction is like, I'm not, anyway.
You put one sci-fi book on there and they're like, do you
adventurous, it says embracing the unpredictable and the unknown. This reader enjoys stepping into uncharted literary territories and experiencing a sense of discovery and a new book or author they encounter. And thoughtful, they appreciate thought-provoking storytelling that challenges their perspectives and encourages deep reflection, as exemplified by their interest in works that combine intricate plots with emotional depth and philosophical themes. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of that.
Like, some of it I could quibble with, but like overall, I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, especially like the part where it's like you thrive on like complex worlds and characters, like definitely.
Yeah, I think that and like the thoughtful aspect of like, you know, especially like depth of characters, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, you'll please follow up about what that website is, because I'm very
I'm looking for, because I think I also took a screenshot, so I'm trying to see if I took a screenshot where it had like the website in
So
there.
then, does it recommend books or just tells you who you are?
It does. I did not find the recommendations very helpful. Oh, here. It's called $1,000,000,000unicorn.com.
What?
I don't know.
That was like really sketchy.
Like, yeah, it's like, how would I ever find that?
I don't know. Okay, apparently I did this another time, and it also gave me the words eclectic.
So is this like they do it almost like a business plan, it looks like. Is that right?
Hold on. I'm gonna
$1 unicorn. Is that what you said?
Yes. Wow, I have no idea.
But you have to go. Hey, Kara, you have to go to the drop-down menu to get out of the business one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, book recommender. Okay.
I didn't even see that. Hold on.
Yes. And so then there is like a character limit for how many you can include or something. But it will spit out like descriptors.
Well, now I have to go back to Goodreads and find out what books do I like.
What is a book?
Yeah, what have I given 5 stars or 4 stars? Solid 4 stars.
Yeah, I think I did this a few times, but I kind of grouped things. Like I did a group of like fantasy, and then I did a group of like the type of sci-fi that I like, and then I did a group of like different things to see like what they would say about like the different kind of categories that I read. Yeah, because I think I did it for sci-fi, and I got slightly different. Like I got thought-provoking, because they like books that offer deep philosophical and existential questions that challenge perspectives and beliefs. Societal is that they engage with books that critique or explore social and political issues, reflecting on the implications of different societies and power structures. And empathetic And they specifically called out, like, through their choices of literature like Kindred and The First Sister, this reader shows a desire to empathize with diverse characters and experiences, reflecting their compassion and interest in understanding different perspectives. So I was kind of like grouping them by like genres. Yeah. Oh my God, he's trying.
Did you write out like this book? Did you write out like Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, or did you just write the names of the books? Or
I think I did a mix of writing either just the name or just an author, because sometimes, like, I think I did like Juliet Marillier instead of listing all of her books.
Yeah.
And that worked fine, except I think there was once or twice where there was like a book title that there were multiple books with that title and they assumed it was a different one. So then I went back and added the author name and then it like did it correctly. But for the most part, yeah, I just...
Oh no! I pushed recommend too quickly. Stop.
I forgot which direction I was going.
Okay, so I did...
Going this way.
I sort of did like a variety for mine because I wanted to see what it gave me if I like gave sort of a representative sampling of like the genres I read or the different kinds of books. So my profile, it says, as a reader who enjoys Anna Marie McLemore, Frances Harding, and T. Kingfisher, I appreciate magical realism, intricate storytelling, and diverse representation. I also find joy in the classic works of Jane Austen, William Shakespeare, and George MacDonald, drawn to their timeless themes and eloquent prose. Like, yes, it's true, but that's not very helpful. The recommendations, though, is interesting because they recommend Cemetery Boys, which I did really enjoy. 10,000 Doors of January, which I DNF'd. Sorcery of Thorns, which I thought was very mediocre. But then, for the author recommendations, Catherine M. Valenti, which is true, and I actually almost put her on the list. Lee Bardugo, no, but I can see why they would think that. And Madeline Miller, sort of, because I loved one of her books and I have no interest in the other one. So, I don't know. My keywords: eclectic, yeah, imaginative, thoughtful, introspective, and enthusiastic. So I have a lot of overlap with you, Huck.
Yeah. Although I wonder, do they have different descriptors? Because I think when I did this a couple of different times, depending on the book, like the descriptor for the keywords would change.
Okay, so for eclectic, it said, this reader enjoys a diverse range of authors and genres, spanning from classic literature to modern young adult fantasy. That makes sense, and that's one of the, I think, primary defining factors of my reading. Imaginative, I think it has the same description: deep appreciation for rich storytelling, world building, and imaginative narratives. Thoughtful, a reader who engages deeply with themes, characters, and underlying messages present in the books they read. Yes. Introspective, reader enjoys introspective and character-driven stories that explore complex emotions and relationships. Yes. Enthusiastic, they are passionate about reading and discovering new voices and perspectives in literature, showing enthusiasm for a variety of styles and storytelling techniques. So I feel like their keyword description is actually really accurate for me.
Yeah.
Interesting. Kelly, do you want to share?
Well, I'm still typing mine in because
Oh, sorry.
because I'm also trying to make sure, because sometimes, like, when I sorted by like my favorite books, you know, a lot of the things that came up first were some of the like classics and stuff, and I'm like, well, I want to mix because I don't want it to like put in all my favorite classics and then
Right.
everything. So I'm still putting in.
Yeah, the name of this website does sound very sketchy, though.
It really does. Like, if I had just seen this listed somewhere, I'd be like, I don't think I trust this. So it's a good thing that you could vouch for it, Huck.
Well, I can't vouch for, like, I mean, I don't know what vouching for it means.
Well, I mean that it is at least a legit website that gets you to the place that it's supposed to.
Yes, it does that. And it's not and yeah, if this was the kind of thing where it in any way asked for any personal information, I would be like, no. but it's just asking for books, so it's okay.
I'm like putting way too much thought into this, like trying to figure out. Like,
No, I feel you. Like I'm always
Yeah.
overthinking
Well,
stuff like this.
I mean, that's why I did it multiple times, was because I
Yeah.
was like, well, there's a limit to how many books I can list. And so I think I did it once with like a mix of things. And then I did it like different times with like fantasy, sci-fi. Like, I kind of grouped things. I think I did a romance one for like the contemporary
Yeah.
romance that I read, to see what it would say.
I think honestly one of the most useful parts of this for me is like the keywords, because it's like, yeah, these are things I value regardless of genre or type.
Mhm.
And some of it is stuff that like I not that I find it hard to describe, but I don't always know that I'm like communicating exactly what I want to say and like sort of what I want from stories. And so I feel like that's good.
Yeah.
Um
I'm also not surprised that we had some overlap in like the keywords that we got. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that like your reading is certainly more eclectic than mine is, but like some of the other things make sense.
Yeah. And especially that we're both like character driven readers.
Yeah.
It makes sense that we have a lot of overlap in terms of like complex, relationships and characters and themes. I love a good theme. Which is still so funny.
it's like, which of these favorite books is actually a favorite book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Who's gonna make the cut?
I did one where like the profile I got, because I did like Daughter of the Forest, Queens of Innisgleer, The Lost Queen, Spear. Like there's a very specific thing that I was doing. And so like my profile for that says, I appreciate intricate plots, strong character development, and richly detailed fantasy worlds. I'm drawn to stories that blend historical elements with myth and magic, and I savor the emotional depth and lyrical prose found in these beloved works. I'm like,
Yeah.
that sounds accurate.
Pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, as far as I can tell, it doesn't look like this is an AI thing, right? It's just like a algorithm. I don't know if that's the correct word, but
I don't know. Yeah.
It does not like certain names though. I had to like change. Retype.
It took me like multiple tries to even figure out how to list multiple things, because I tried to do enter.
Yeah,
to like
me too.
start a new line, and it was like
No,
calculating
you do like
your
a comma.
Yeah, I got there eventually, because at first I tried to do that, and then I was like, oh well, shift enter pretty much always does like a single space, and it's like, nope, calculating favorites, and I was like, okay, sorry.
Yeah. I think I did another one. Yeah, mine, even though like I did another one where I had like Middle Game, Black Sun, City of Brass, the Tensorate series, and The Binding. That's very different. But it still came up with some of the same things. So I guess it's like you were saying, it's those things that I kind of like regardless of genre. Because this one says like, I'm drawn to rich, intricate world building and complex storytelling that intertwines magic and mystery in fascinating ways. I appreciate deep character development, lyrical prose, and a touch of fantastical that weaves seamlessly into thought-provoking narratives. Some of that's the same as the last one.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, character development and lyrical prose, that's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
So not
Well,
surprised.
like, so the description for when they're recommending Madeline Miller to me, one of the things they say, echo the blend of classic literature and modern themes found in Shakespeare and Marissa Meyer's works, offering a fresh perspective on familiar tales. And it's like, yeah, I guess there are sort of commonalities of theme that I hadn't thought about. Like, obviously I know retellings, they're all retellings.
Right.
But I was like, okay, that's sort of surprisingly insightful when it came to combining those things. But it's interesting because when they recommend Lee Bardugo to me, I would have thought it would be because I put Marissa Meyer in and I put Owen Colfer in. And they do mention Marissa Meyer, but they also mention Jordan Fueco, and I really don't think that there's many similarities between Lee Bardugo and Jordan Fueco. Like, they describe Bardugo's intricate world building, strong character development, and compelling storytelling. And I'm like, I mean, obviously, like, your opinions on these books are going to be different for different people, but I'm like, that is not how I would describe, like, any of her books that I've read. Like, I don't know. It's just like, I guess I can see why they would recommend it because of a couple of the authors that I said, but not the reasoning. Like, I don't agree with that reasoning at all.
Yeah, from my screenshots, I did not, like, I don't have the reasoning, but I can see that, like, from the one that I did that was like middle game, Black Sun, City of Brass, you know, Black Tides of Heaven, like all of that. The first recommendation is Gideon the Ninth, which I did not like. And so I'm like, okay.
Okay,
I can see why they would think, because, like, especially because of middle game, why they would pick that.
Guess. But then, like, I did another one that was all sci-fi, and the first top recommendation is The House in the Cerulean Sea, which also didn't like, but I don't really get it, because, like, the books that I had, I think that it's because I included Psalm for the Wild build, and they're like, oh, well, that's cozy, and this is cozy, and it's like, that's very different.
It told me, I didn't realize it wouldn't cut me off, and so I had to, like, go back and erase stuff. Okay, now okay, here we go. Okay, a reader who enjoys T. Kingfisher, A Jury of Her Peers, The Count of Monte Cristo, and Jane Austen, among others, is likely drawn to a diverse range of genres, including mystery, classics, and fantasy, with a preference for strong, character-driven narratives and intricate plots. Is that what you guys got too?
There's some similarities.
Okay, this reader appreciates a mix of historical fiction, contemporary themes, and fantasy elements, seeking out unique and imaginative storytelling in the works of authors like Jordan Fueco, Tamara Pierce, and Emily Henry. Which, putting those three together is kind of...
Also, like, it's funny because you don't read a lot of historical fiction.
So no, like, well, and I'm wondering, I might have written, like, what did I write that was historical fiction? I wrote some classics.
Right.
But they aren't historical fiction. Like, I think there's only one actual historical fiction in there.
I think what we need is somebody who has much more different, like a much different taste from all of us to do this. To be like, do they say the same thing to everyone? Because I feel like there's a lot of overlap, but also that's maybe not the most surprising.
Yeah. Well,
but here we do have overlap.
Yeah. Right. So my recommendations, though, I feel like you guys got these. I got Circe by Madeline Miller, which makes sense because I put Jennifer Saint as... Right. But I prefer Jennifer Saint to Madeline Miller. And then the 10,000 Doors of January. Which, didn't you get that one too?
I also got that one, yeah.
And then Priory of the Orange Tree, which I DNF'd.
I did not like that book.
That's funny. Although I can, I guess, sort of see why they would recommend it to you based on some of the authors you said, but like...
Yeah, well, but the funny thing is, do you want to know why they recommended the Priory of the Orange Tree?
Please tell us.
This does not make sense. It says, if you enjoyed works like The Night Gardener and My Lady Jane, which I would not put in the category of The Priory of the Orange Tree.
No.
Because it says that this epic fantasy novel offers a blend of complex characters, intricate world building, and compelling storytelling. I get that, but I do not think those are similar at all.
No, the vibes are completely different.
Yeah, like My Lady Jane, which might have been where the historical came from. But it's like cheeky and not epic fantasy.
I wonder too, so I did all authors for mine. And so I wonder if that also affects how specific they are.
Yeah.
Well, like looking at my specific book recommendations, I actually think they did pretty good because, like I said, I really enjoyed Cemetery Boys. And even though I DNF'd 10,000 Doors of January and I was super overwhelmed by Sorcery of Thorns, like the pieces in them I should have liked.
Yeah.
And so it's like, even though I don't like, for me personally, it wasn't a good recommendation. I'm like, okay, this at least supports the method they're using, I guess. Like, which again, if it really isn't AI, that's great, because like I don't use AI stuff. I don't vibe with that. And so if they can be this accurate based on an algorithm or whatever the alternative is, that's interesting. But
yeah, I don't know how they put this together. I'm sure you could do a similar thing with AI.
Right. Which I would not use. So I like that this one seems to be different from what I can see.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, and I kind of am curious to read 10,000. I've never read 10,000 Doors of January. It's like I'm drawn to Alex E. Harrow's like concepts, but I just don't know. I've only read one book by them, so I'm not sure if I would love it or not. It seems so mixed.
So I DNF'd it very early on, so I don't know how you would feel about the story. I feel like you would not enjoy the writing style. It's very flowery. As I recall, at least. I remember it being like,
no, I would agree. The writing style is the thing that I like the most about Alex E. Harrow. Her stories, like the concepts, I'm always kind of like, you know.
Yeah.
But like the writing I enjoy. So
and I don't
like
know.
flowery writing, so we might have opposite opinions.
Yeah, because that's why I haven't picked up any of the bigger books, because I read, is it the Spindle Splintered, or is that the second one?
Yeah,
whatever was the first one. I liked the concept and I enjoyed it, but I was like, if this was any bigger than a novella, I don't think I would have liked it. So that's when I'm wondering, like, what's in Future Witches is humongous. So will I like that writing in that much pages? So like, I've been curious. I did get it out from the library last month and I didn't end up reading because I was like, I'll just read the first couple chapters and see, because I'm kind of curious if I would like the longer fiction.
Yeah. I do think I need to get going because I need to take Merlin out and then give him dinner. So
yes. Okay. All right. So we are going to wrap up. Thank you to Huck and Kelly for joining me. They are both linked in the description. And yeah, thanks to people who are hanging out with us, for people who watch this later. And we will hopefully be back with another craft sprint in a shorter time frame, but no promises. Like, we don't know. It's like we're the traveling circus. We just like pop up one day.
Exactly.
And now we're gonna do this.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and thanks for hanging out with us. Now I get to end stream for like 20 minutes.